Hello, everybody. Zordo here from Analog Man Cave, and my special guest for my long-form conversation is Alexander Macris. What's up, Alex? How you doing? Now it's Macris, right? I'm saying this right?
That's right. You got it right.
All
Rhymes
right.
with peace, not with piss.
That's good. I like that. I like that. That's a good one. All right. Thanks for joining, man. I do appreciate this. And we are talking a little bit backstage. I was doing a bit of research on you just to understand. Oh, crap. I got to go to Facebook. God damn it. Facebook. Because I have to turn it on. So it's not just myself, listening to myself here for some stupid ass reason. Thank you, Facebook, and whoever the hell runs it. Edit audience. It's public, not just me. There we go. All right. So we're good there. All right. So yeah, like I said, I was doing some research to figure out because I've known a lot of people in the OSR, and we've run in the same circles for what 15 years at least, right? But we never met, at least not like this, So I was doing a bit of a dive, in stalker style into your history here, and here's what I found out about Alex.
All right.
U.S. Military Academy. He left because of bad knees or something, I guess, or couldn't run the mile out or whatever it was, right? You did that.
Yep.
Then he says, fuck this military academy. I'm going to Harvard Law School, which I'm actually am a lawyer. I'm not just a rules lawyer and, managing bush spells. But I went to, there's tiers of law schools. Harvard's here and mine is under the ground. All right. So that's the difference between our law schools. It's buried. You wouldn't even know what the hell it was. In fact, it wasn't even accredited when I went there. They got accreditation my second year. So what the fuck? And after that, he says, well, screw this law bullshit. I'm going to go make a magazine. All right, an online webpage called The Escapist, which was huge back in the early OSR days. And at one point, Time Magazine called this one of the top 20 websites on the entire friggin' internet. Right. So I'm like, damn. Okay. And so now, if you guys, here's another thing, he's deep into history, military history, tactics, and strategy. So I dug deep and I found this out. I know you didn't know I'd be able to find this out, but my Google skills and my Chat GPT and Grok are really, really good, though. I got the good foo here.
All right.
But his father, your father, undercover CIA agent, okay, didn't know it until after he died, but he taught him some skills because Alex was the guy behind the meme last year of how many times men think of the Roman Empire per day. Secretly, I found this shit out. I know it. See, you didn't think I found that out, did you?
Oh man, that is wild. Yeah, no, it's true. My father was a CIA guy, and we didn't find out till after he passed away. And like it was like that scene from The Usual Suspects when all of a sudden, the whole movie flashes before his eyes and he realizes like all these tales, how they all connect. It was exactly that same way in the aftermath of his funeral.
Dude,
and we're like running around the house finding like weird papers that we hadn't understood and like Swiss bank accounts we didn't know he had. It was really crazy.
Yeah, I know. I'm listening to this shit. I'm like, you got to be shitting me. This guy. Did you find any like? What's the coolest thing you could say that you found without having us hit squad come after you tonight?
So this was the craziest thing, right? So, what the story is? My father spoke 7 languages.
Yeah.
And he was a very physically impressive man. He had worked overseas in the oil shale industry. And then he had traveled all around the world. And he always had like these weird trips, right? Like he'd go to Yemen and then there'd be a coup in Yemen. And then he was like, but then he'd be safe and sound back in Athens. And he'd say, oh, well, if you speak the language, it's not a big deal to get
There's Kermit Roosevelt out there overthrowing countries with a bag of cash.
And so it was like a running joke that like, oh, I bet dad is a secret agent. So at his funeral, like these people show up, dark suits. None of us know who they are. They pay their respects and they leave. And I like crack a joke to his sister, and I'm like, "Oh, I bet those were his CIA buddies." And she's like, "Oh, yeah, that makes sense." And I'm like, "Whoa, whoa! What do you mean, anti-vet?" And she's like, "Oh, did your father not tell you he was recruited when he was in college?" And so afterwards, I do this deep dive into his papers, and I find like trips on his passport that he never told us about. And my mom was like, he said he went to Switzerland. What was he doing, there? I'm like, well, what did he say he was always going to Switzerland for? And she's like, well, he said he had really bad hemorrhoids and there was a clinic there.
The hemorrhoid clinic, the Swiss hemorrhoid
and I'm
clinic.
Like, and I'm like, she's like, well, I didn't check to see if he actually had hemorrhoids, like. So anyway, we end up finding this this paperwork for the Bureau of Foreign Research. And I call the number and it's Langley, Virginia. It's the CIA. And the name listed, Lenz Lingler, is actually a dude who works there. And they like connect me through to him. And I'm like, hi, Mr. Lingler. This is Alex Macris, and my father recently passed away, Nick Macris, and we're calling all his old friends to invite them to, the funeral. And there's like this really long pause. And then he says, I don't know a Nick Macris, but please tell Carol I'm sorry for her loss. And he just hangs up on me. And I'm like,
oh shit. That was a spy.
like that was it. And we never made much progress about that. So I don't really know what he did, but something.
It's interesting. Do you want to know? Do you want to figure this out someday? Or do you just like, I don't want to know what Dad may or may not have done?
Oh, I definitely want to know.
You want to know?
God, I definitely want to know. Yeah. But it makes sense why I got into, because when it was time to apply to college, my father just sits me down and he says, Alex, I have picked 2 schools for you to go to. You can go to Georgetown School of Foreign Service or the U.S. Military Academy. Apply there. And I'm like,
and you'll get in.
Those are really hard schools to get into, Dad. Shouldn't I have some safeties? No.
Nope.
So I just applied to those 2 schools and I got into both on early admission, like completely should not have. And so I was like, well, I guess I'll go to the military academy then. Good. You will study military intelligence. That is your branch. Okay, Dad. I mean, it was just like,
Jesus Christ.
So I'm like, I think in an alternative timeline, I was supposed to like follow in his shoes and become a secret agent. Yeah.
So he saw it in you. He saw the potential for the Jason Bourne in you. Yeah.
So
damn, man. The other thing too is I was watching a lot of these videos you've done, interviews. You've done a hell of a great series of interviews on your book, Arbiter of Worlds, and just a lot of interviews over the years. And I was watching the one Rolling Bones with Ryan Howard. I'm like, and this guy is a philosophy major. It makes me realize I should have fucking not just read the Cliff Notes in college, because this is stuff I should have learned or had a chance to learn at some point, but for the brain fog of booze. But I just missed it or whatever. So because of all that, I had to actually, do a deep dive. I got some books off of Amazon, so I had to just prepare. I got Andor by Clausewitz. All right, I got the Hero with 1,000, whatever the hell is 1,000 faces here. I got, I'm sure, you didn't talk about this, but Dustbook Zarathustra is on the list of influences.
Yep.
Of influences, right? Of course, we got to go Greek because,
we got
to go Greek. Yeah. And, we got also complete works of Aristotle, the basic ones. The basics. Yep. I just had to dive a little bit. This is my light, I call it my shiterial, reading when you're just taking a dump, you know what I mean?
Yep.
But, and of course, no good Greek dive is good done without the Iliad and the Odyssey.
Absolutely.
You gotta have that going, and just finishing up with poetics a little bit.
Oh,
here.
wow.
And see, this is me showing off. I don't read these fucking books. I just have them because someday I want to read them. I want to be smart, just like this one. Someday. God damn it.
Yeah.
Someday. I've read maybe some of them, but yeah. So I figured this is going to be an interesting deep dive. Deep dive. So, in order to mentally prepare for this, I got all this intellectual stuff. I watched the videos, a lot of notes, all this shit. But
man,
we're D&Ders.
Glad I had an extra cup of coffee today.
I had a whole pot, dude, a whole fucking pot. And then I souped up on those Joe Rogan pills that make your brain work better. I had the mushroom coffee to get set. You know what I mean? Just to get this. I want to be present, but.
Do the Joe Rogan pills actually work? Because I could use some of those.
It doesn't hurt. You know what I mean? They're fucking expensive, though. I figure I think it helps a little bit. It helps with the focus. It helps with the ADHD focus if you got that going on. So it definitely, but they ain't cheap,
I didn't used to, but then I discovered the internet, and then I developed ADHD.
Right. We're all goddamn retards now because we watch too much TikTok and Twitter and short stuff, And he did a TED Talk. I forgot to mention that, which he talks about brain rot of not people reading and all that. So I don't ever met anybody with a CIA father, military academy, TED Talk, and Harvard Law. So this is going to be an interesting thing. But I'm
the world's most underemployed man at this moment. Yeah.
Seriously, what the hell, dude? Because you gave up a job at the most prestigious law firm in the country out of Harvard Law. Said I'm going to make a webpage. I mean, what the fuck?
I mean, look, it almost worked out, right? Because I ended up, The Escapist became really big. We were one of the top websites for video games. We sold it to Defy Media. It was an all stock deal, and then Defy Media went bankrupt. And so everything I built, all of the equity I thought I would have just went to zero. And so like age 45, I was back to zero. I'm like, well, that was a waste of my entire career. 20 years gone. Poof.
You learned something.
So, I learned that if you swing for the home run, sometimes you really regret that. And you think, I really should have just taken the single.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Everybody wants to play it safe and this and that. At the end of the day, they're on their deathbed at 80 or 70 or whatever, and they say, "Fuck, I should have swung for the home run." You went for the goddamn home run. So
that's right. And I'm going to be on my deathbed and be like, I fucking should have taken the double.
Should have bunted it. Oh God. Yeah. I'm now says 1,500 pages of reading ACKS Basic. Yeah, exactly. What are you drinking there, man? Because in order to balance my brain out from all that prep activity, I've made an old fashioned, and I may have had a puff of
I should have done it. No, so my wife has been hitting me on not being hydrated enough. Apparently you can't just drink coffee, she said.
I heard that too. Yeah, so, your pee smells like coffee. That's a sign. I've noticed.
It's a sign. Yeah, it's a bad thing.
Yeah, not good.
Yeah, so, it's kind of the point. If my dog smells my pee, he gets wired. That's like a really bad sign.
What they call when they run
your tail starts wagging. He's like, "Oh, this is an intense female, Dad."
Jesus Christ. So. Yeah. So I figured, and guys, we usually do this, like I said, this whole video series I started a while back is to get to know somebody really in depth and understand where they come from, make them tick, and then also get into what's the creative process and publishing experiences and tips and tricks and all that kind of stuff too. But Alex has 2 hours tonight, and let me know if you want to go shorter or longer. Your call.
2 hours is great. I'm good.
All right, so give me 2 hours. So I figure we'll get to know Alex tonight, and then maybe if I don't piss him off too much or make a fool of myself or himself, maybe we could do another one. He said about the business side and creative aspects of it at some point. So. Yeah, Victor Gorchoff is here. I just subscribed to you, I think, Victor, your channel, I believe. Yeah, it was a waste of money. Reserve XP. I like that. Could be fun.
Someone said I sound like George Lucas. That's interesting.
Really? I could see that. Yeah, or I could hear that rather. Yeah, I that's a definite thing. No, yeah, you got that.
I need to go listen to George Lucas now and find out what I sound like.
And guys, we're cross streaming this on both our channels on YouTube. This is on Facebook, X, Twitter, and Rumble, as well as YouTube. So Alex, right now you got 13 people on your channel watching, you got 31 on my channel watching, we got a bunch on X, and somebody over on Rumble. There's always one guy on Rumble, dude. I think Raptor7, I think he's a bot. I think he's like a Russian bot because he never misses a show. He'll pop up eventually, I'm telling you.
That's awesome. We live in the future, man. We're like simulcasting. It's awesome.
I know, it's nuts, isn't it? You're Gen X, right? We're about the same age. I'm mid-50s. It's amazing.
I'm 50, yeah.
Yeah. It's like, so you're bottom Gen X, I'm sort of in the middle Gen X, and we've lived through a hell of a time. We really have, I think. We've seen everything. We've seen, playing until the street lights go on and just wandering and grazing in the neighborhood down to this right here. We're talking about D&D shit with somebody I never would have met in my entire life had not all this existed. It's an amazing thing we lived through, dude. Amazing thing. So,
and it's like, I feel like in my life, multiple times, I feel like I've watched us change timelines, right? Like we were on one timeline post Cold War, like everything is great. Everybody loves each other. The biggest problem in the country is who Bill Clinton is having sex with.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden
it's like, in the Oval Office. Yeah.
Right.
And then all of a sudden it's like blowjobs,
Yeah. Right. Then it's this season of America will be brought to you by Tom Clancy. And then all of a sudden it's like 9/11 and freaking New York is blowing up, right? It just keeps getting, the timeline just keeps getting crazier over my lifetime.
Dude, I don't know if I told this on any YouTube story or whatever, but I was there. I was working in Manhattan at the time, like I said, working for that company I told you.
Wow.
And I was working from home that day. It went off, but Thursday night I snuck onto the site and I was out there all night because I had to do some cathartic thing to do something. So I just maneuvered my way through before all the National Guard and the Army arrived, and I was on this site digging people out, or trying to at least. And it was just like one of those what the fuck moments. You know what I mean? It was just one of those, what the hell am I doing here? Looking around was a post-apocalyptic hellscape. Wearing masks and just trying to, like, what in the hell? What in the hell?
I remember getting woken up at 8 a.m., 8:30, something like that, by my roommate's mother. And she's like in a panic, and she's like, airplanes are falling out of the sky into skyscrapers. And I'm like, okay, I'll let them know you called. And, and I'm like thinking, wow, so-and-so's mom is really crazy. And then I like turn on the TV. Oh my God, airplanes are falling out of the sky.
It's fucking insane, man. It's fucking insane. And here we are, we're playing D&D to get over our fucking trauma,
True.
You started playing D&D like when you were like, what, out of the womb? You came out with a Gary's Player's Handbook in your hand or something, I think, wasn't it?
Basically. It's my older brother's fault, right? Because he was 9 years older than me, 8 years older than me. So he was 14 when I was 5. And so he starts playing D&D in like the high school
Yeah.
D&D club, and I just thought it was like the coolest thing ever because I'm 5, and everything your big brother does when you're
Yeah.
5
Oh
is
yeah.
really
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. My brother didn't
So
feel that way, but yeah, I get it. Yeah.
yeah, so I like made him teach me, and so I'm like at first I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm just kind
Yeah.
of I'm like a cargo cult game master. I'm doing
Uh-huh.
what my brother does, not really
Uh-huh.
understanding it. But it's like with those kids that they start to teach them to play Mozart when they're age 3, and then they become concert
Yeah.
pianists.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I just instead of getting a useful life skill, I got dungeon mastering.
That's that you know what? Look, here you are making a living off.
Here I am. Yeah.
You know, you're doing all right, man. You're doing all right.
My parents are like, Willie, why didn't you teach him to play chess?
I mean, your father, did he talk about D&D as a good thing or a bad thing as a CIA operative? Did he ever comment on it, whether it be helpful in a career that he wanted you to pursue?
So it was actually very funny. When I was in high school, I got into Cyberpunk, right? That
Okay.
Cyberpunk 2020 by Autarch was our big game. And we had these really extensive campaigns where we were playing mercenaries.
Mm-hmm.
And this is back, there's no cell phones or anything, right? So if you want to like talk to someone, you have to just do it on the phone. We have a phone that's like hanging on the wall with a cord by the dinner table.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So like, my family would be at the dinner table and one of my friends will call, want to talk to me about the campaign, and I'll just go pick up the phone and and I'll be like, all right, yeah. So you guys want to hire mercenaries? Yeah, we can do the
God,
we can do the wet work this Friday. Okay, for sure. I'll have the mission ready to go. Great.
Oh
I
my
hang up
God.
and I just sit back down at the table. My mother looks at my father. My father's like, I have nothing to do with this.
Did you hear mysterious clicks on the phone listening to? Like this, they're listening to me.
I look back and it's so funny. And but my dad was very good humored about it. He
Mhm.
would sometimes he would come up and ask to play with us, and
Oh, that's cool.
yeah.
That's cool, man. Yeah. So what did you get into in terms of fantasy influences back then? It seems like I heard some of your shows, you had some of the similar books. Any movies, any books? What was your favorite? What was your thing that really pushes you into D&D?
Yeah. So Conan the Barbarian, John
Oh yeah.
Milius movie, and all of the Conan novels, the old Ace and Lance paperbacks, like
Mhm.
Conan the Adventurer, Conan the Conqueror. Literally, the basis of the name of the RPG is right from those
The
old.
R.E. Howard only, or did you branch out into everybody's?
I mean, I read all the Conan
Mhm.
stories, so like Elsprague de Camp, Lynn Carter, Robert Jordan, all of
Yeah.
those. So let's see. Then the Dragonlance books were huge for me. I really
Okay.
loved Dragonlance.
Yeah.
That was like my middle school favorite. I think I
Were
read.
you a Raceland guy or a Caraman guy?
I was a Raceland guy, of course.
Yeah, me too.
I mean,
We had to be. We're geeks. We're
yeah,
smart geeks, and people didn't understand us. You got to be a
absolutely,
Raceland guy.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I was absolutely convinced I was going to go Black Robes. I was ready.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Um, Let's see. Movie Dragon Slayer, I really liked. I don't know,
Okay.
that's kind of a cult classic from the 80s, but it was
Mhm.
really, really excellent. Um, let's see. I read a lot of really classic science fiction that my mother used to give me.
Okay.
So, I had a huge collection of Larry Niven, Robert Heinlein, Isaac Asimov. I read every one of their
Yeah.
books, I think, by the
Wow.
time I'd gotten through high school. Yeah.
I did the big ones,
Um,
iRobot, Foundation, all the main
yep.
ones. I didn't read. I didn't do a deep dive though.
Yeah, I did. I did it. I was a really voracious reader as a kid. Um, and then in college, I got into Robert Jordan,
Mhm.
and Wheel of Time, which I used to read that series really heavily until eventually I burned out because
Yeah.
Robert Jordan.
Yeah. I mean, the
So,
first one was awesome. First four were good. After that, I'm like, he's just milking this shit. And then I said to myself, he's gonna fucking croak before this is done. Here we go.
yep. And
You
then he
know?
did. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So,
And then it was like George R. Martin, and then R. Scott Baker, then Joe
yeah.
Abercrombie, kind of like in a sequence like that.
Oh, Joe Abercrombie's good stuff. Yeah.
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 What are you currently reading? Anything good? What's on your shelf? Like, what's next to your bed right now? Fantasy
Got it.
stuff, if anything,
Gosh. The last fantasy series that I read was the sequel series to First Law by Joe Abercrombie. So,
Oh,
there's like
okay.
the First Law series.
Yeah.
And then, so he then wrote a sequel, which is like the generation later, and it's Gortka's daughter is the main character,
Okay.
and they're dealing with the aftermath of the Industrial Revolution that's kind of spread through
Okay.
the realm. So that was the most recent one I read. And, I was a little sad because his whole riff is like he moved the timeline forward and magic is dying, so it's like there's a
Yeah.
lot less magic and whatnot in the setting now. I like the first trilogy better.
Yep. He had good stuff, but nothing immersed me into his world as much as some of the older books. I was maybe because I was a kid, you know. Maybe I'm not into the world building immersion. Like I could read Game of Thrones and not care much about the world. I'm more like it depressed me, you know, and more like about the story now. But that's just me, I guess. I read differently than a lot. Here's the thing: I was wondering this about your approach to your game because you have a very mechanical inclination. There's a rule for everything. There's tables for everything. There's charts. And I'm the same way in some regard. But Greg Christopher, Chubby Funster here, who I interviewed first, he says to me one time, how could you be that much into like the high level game and economics and running businesses and all this shit and not be into ACKS? I said, because I like to riff off of it. I don't want a formalized system. And maybe it goes back to how I read things, because what I don't even like to do, it's just how my fucking brain works, is I will read Lord of the Rings and tell you what happened, but not be able to quote anything really, because when I'm reading a book, it's a movie in my head. I could describe the memory that I see in my brain, but it's not like I don't remember the quotes and I can't quote what was on what page. It just becomes, I don't recognize words. I just see images essentially. And once I get into it, right? Are you the same way, or do you have a different approach? I would suspect it's different because of the mechanical approach you take to the game.
Yeah, actually, I found my old childhood IQ tests, and it's actually quite funny because, you know, sort of you get scored in different areas, and my visual spatial is about a standard deviation lower than my mathematical and my verbal skills.
I would have expected that.
Yeah. So like really, really fast reader, really good at math. But you know, if you ask me to like, I don't know, rotate a three-dimensional shape in my head, like I can do it still better than the average person.
Yeah.
But it's sort of like, you know, I would say like I have like a really good CPU and a really good amount of RAM, but like my graphics card is maybe one generation older.
And I'm a little bit slower on the CPU. The RAM, you know, the RAM gets shrinks. So, you know, the older you get, the RAM
Right.
But the visual's still there. Like I playing a game, running it, you know, DM in a game or whatever. When the players go back to a place that they were at multiple times, I could tell you what it looks like. I close my eyes, I see them moving from room to room and step by step.
Wow.
That's just how I see it. So when I'm describing it, I'm remembering it.
That's
you know
amazing.
what I mean?
That's
I'm not reading it.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit different of an approach. And I thought that might be the difference as to why I didn't dive fully headfirst into ACKS all the mechanics, but I love a lot of the mechanics. You know
that
what
makes
I mean?
sense, actually. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm the opposite. In fact, I often, even in a dungeon I've designed and created the map, I still have to like refer to the map very frequently as I'm running them through it.
Yeah.
Like, whereas I can remember the intricacies of like the timeline and, you know, obscure lore facts and things like that. No problem. But if you ask me how you get from room B7 to room C1 in the Nether City, I'm like, I don't know. I gotta look at the map, man.
And I'm closing my eyes and I'm seeing it. You know what I mean? That's yeah. So that makes sense. That makes sense. So all right. So Greg, you have your answer. Son of a
there
bitch.
You go, Greg.
Making fun of me up there.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think how different, you know, we take for granted like, oh, so and so is smart, so and so is not smart, or whatever, you know, in this kind of offhand way we talk, but different intelligences think really differently. My wife is a very visual thinker like you.
Yeah.
My brother, for instance, Arcanus Will on our Discord, you know, is a mechanical genius, right? Like, you know, he'll say something like, oh yeah, you know, I'm kind of into motorcycles. And I'm like, oh, you know, are you taking motorcycle lessons? And he'll be like, no, I'm assembling a motorcycle. You know,
yeah.
Just not a big deal to him. You know, he has multiple 3D printers, and he's like, oh yeah, I just, you know, picked this up on the side. You know, and for me, I'm like, what black magic is this? And it's,
God, yeah, that's Robert Rodriguez. He did a lot of the Dust Till Dawn movie, you know, Tarantino's buddy there. He was doing an interview with Rogan recently, and they were talking about how he met, who the hell was it? James Cameron. And he wanted to impress him. So he's like, James, I bought this, whatever, gadget, whatever. I'm not a mechanical guy either. I bought this great gadget. And he wanted to sort of bond with Cameron over the gadget and using it and taught myself how to use it. And Cameron's like, yeah, I bought one just so I could take it apart and build it better. You know, so that's
right, exactly.
That's the difference.
exactly the truth.
Yeah, mechanical versus visual there.
yeah, and you know, and obviously, like some people are just scoring high in all three. Some people are better in others. So
yeah. Everybody's got their own strengths and weaknesses. You just got to roll with it. You know,
absolutely.
So you have ACKS, and it came out. Your second edition of ACKS is out, and I just I'm waiting for it because I bought the slipcase version, so that's coming in the mail soon. I guess the slipcases are in, so I can't wait to see it, man.
Nice.
and you also have a different approach to things in terms of ACKS. You did lean into the Conan stuff, right? You did definitely lean into the Conan stuff. How is ACKS different than 5e? How would you, what are the, I know you don't like elevators pitches, and how would you say, like, there's a 5e, I might have 3 5e fans in my 3,500 followers here, right? So maybe. So if for those 3 guys, because they're all guys. I have no girls who watch my video. I don't know why. I have a gorgeous hair. I don't understand it. But anyway, for those 3 fucking guys, what is the pitch? How do you get them to do ACKS, and why? How is it different than 5e?
Oh, it's so funny you asked this, because we were having a huge debate today in my Discord about this very conversation.
Oh, really?
And
Okay.
yeah, and it's actually
I just joined it, so I haven't seen it.
Yeah, no, it was a really big conversation, and it's actually a difficult conversation to have, because a lot of what makes ACKS special only emerges sort of after you've played the game a long time.
Okay.
But this is what we settled on, right? So
yeah.
You've played every version of D&D. You still love a good dungeon crawl, right? But ACKS is the game where your character's story is going to matter beyond the dungeon. So you killed the sorcerer, you took his tower, but now you can rebuild the crumbling domain. You can broker peace with the local beastmen. You can stop the priesthood from declaring you a heretic. And there's rules for all of that, right?
Yeah.
So ACKS is taking on all the adventure that you can do in other versions of D&D, but then it layers on politics, economics, war, and it all works. So if you want to play a game where the world like doesn't just revolve around you, but exists larger than you, and at the same time you can conquer that world, right?
Yes.
And there's rules for that. Then that's what ACKS offers.
Okay.
And not everyone wants that, but for those who do want that, it's a very singular kind of experience.
Okay.
And the reaction I get from a lot of folks, so I had a bunch of my current group that I play with here in Raleigh, were 5e folks, and they hadn't played ACKS before. And it was like the first 2 sessions, they didn't get it. And then one of the guys called me up and he was like, holy shit, I get it now.
Yeah.
And then he's like gone crazy, and he's, bought all the books, and he's totally into it. And he's like, he ended up getting so into it, he made like a massive map of the setting. So like a nautical sea map for our pirate ships to like travel around on. He brought it into the session. This is an overnight transformation in how he did the game. But the problem I have as a marketer is like, okay, how do you market a game that you have to play 10 times before you realize why you need to play it 1,000 times? And it's a tough pitch.
I think watching your show, watching the Grey Company, I think it's called, right?
Grey Brotherhood.
The Grey Brotherhood. Yeah. That's, I got the Black Company in my head because I know you like that book too. But great shit. That's the gritty stuff I kind of like as well. But I know if you watch your show, you'll understand that a lot better, and one of my questions, because I threw it out there to my Discord and Facebook and everybody, any questions for Alex? And one guy says, hey, how come he can't do the Grey Brotherhood episodes every single week, says the heretic from my Discord. So they want more.
Oh yeah. Well, so we play every other week. We're way behind on the videos. My brother, who I mentioned, Willie, is the video editor for those. But he's also my kind of project manager for the ACKS virtual tabletop.
Okay.
And he was kind of like, well, what do you want, Alex? A virtual tabletop, or do you want more Grey Brotherhood videos? Grumble. So
wait,
the virtual tabletop
You're making your own VTT?
No. We're doing a module for Foundry.
Oh, okay. All right. I was gonna say, holy shit.
Not making that. No.
Yeah. That's another question. I know you're a computer guy and web pages. I wonder if you did your own coding, and if so, make a Roll20, HTML app, because that's all Roll20 is HTML. That's basically it. You can make your character sheets and everything in there.
Yeah, like 20 years ago, I was a decent coder, and now I am not. I'm way out of touch with everything.
Gotcha.
I recently started vibe coding using AI, and that's really fun. I just vibe coded an ACKS app. That was pretty fun.
All right,
so
that's cool.
Cool. Yeah, but in terms of like the current technologies, I haven't touched anything in 20 years. The last time I did things was I was designing games in Wild Tangent, which I don't think people even know what that is anymore. So
well, I don't know. The last coding I've ever done was a Commodore VIC-20. That gives you an idea of my the scope of my skill there. 3K around. But yeah, I'm trying to learn it a little bit because I want to make my own character sheet some point.
Yeah, exactly.
Some point. It's on my list of shit to learn, right? But it's interesting because I know you talked about your love of R.E. Howard and Swords and Sorcery and all that stuff, as well as Lord of the Rings, and you somehow, this is interesting because I have this book. It's the Heroic Fantasy Handbook, right?
Yeah.
There. And I just want to read two. Indulge me for a second. Oh, son of a bitch! I forgot my glasses. Really indulge me here, guys, as I look like an old man trying to see something. All right, because there's something here from I wanted to read from a book here. You'll probably recognize it.
Okay.
Hooves drummed down the street that sloped to the wharves. The folk that yelled and scattered had only a fleeting glimpse of a mailed figure on a black stallion, a wide scarlet cloak flowing out in the wind. Far up the street came the shout and clatter of pursuit, but the horseman did not look back. He swept out onto the wharves and jerked the plunging stallion back on its haunches at the very lip of the post, at the pier. Seamen gaped at him as they stood at the sweep and stripped sail of a high-prowed, broad-waisted galley. The master, sturdy and black-bearded, stood in the bows, easing her away from the piles with a boat hook. He yelled angrily as the horseman sprang from the saddle with a long leap, landed squarely on the deck. "Who invited you aboard?" "Get under way," roared the intruder with a fierce gesture that spattered red drops from his broadsword. "But we're bound for the coasts of Kush," said the master. "Then I'm for Kush. Push off, I tell you." "Okay, can you pay for your passage?" "I'll pay my way with steel," said Conan. Right? And then we get into what happened there. What the hell happened that made Conan do this? And he explains. Well, last night in a tavern, a captain in the King's Guard offered violence to the sweetheart of a young soldier who naturally ran him through. But it seems that there is some cursed law against killing guardsmen, and the boy and his girl fled away. It was brooded about that I was seen with them, so today I was hauled into court, and the judge asked me where the lad had gone. I replied that since he was a friend of mine, I could not betray him. Then the court waxed wroth, and the judge talked a great deal about my duty to the state and society and other things I did not understand, and bade me tell where my friend had flown. By this time, I was becoming wrathful myself, so before I had explained my position. But I choked my ire and held my peace, and the judge squelled that I had shown contempt for the court. He appreciated this as a fellow lawyer, and that I should be hurled into a dungeon to rot until I betrayed my friend. Then, seeing that they were all mad, I drew my sword and cleft the judge's skull. Then I cut my way out of the court, and seeing the high constable's stallion tied nearby, I rode for the wharves where I thought to find a ship bound for foreign parts. Conan.
Amazing.
Right?
Yep.
Awesome,
Yep.
right? So this
Queen
is
of the Black Coast. It's the intro narrative for Queen of the Black Coast. Yep.
Bingo. And then I read something else here from this book, your book, right?
Okay.
And it says, "War must be, while we defend our lives against the destroyer who would devour all. But I do not love the bright sword for its sharpness, nor the arrow for its swiftness, nor the warrior for his glory. I love only that which they defend." From Faramir, from the Lord of the Rings. And this book somehow merges and manages to get together your sense of the heroic fantasy handbook.
Yep.
In my eyes, and in most old school guys' eyes, they're two different things. Swords and Sorcery and Lord of the Rings, heroic fantasy, gritty, Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser shit. How do you put this together in this book in your own head? How do you merge the streams?
Yeah. So the answer is you go back to Beowulf and the Iliad, right?
Okay.
So go back to those heroes and then move forward. And if you start from them and you move forward with Christianity, then you get Lord of the Rings.
Okay.
If you start from them and you keep the pagan worldview, and then you add a little bit of Lovecraftian Cthulhu horror, then you get Conan. But both of them have at their ancestral level, they have Beowulf, right? And Tolkien will openly admit that, right? Like Tolkien wrote the definitive translation of Beowulf. He wrote his essay on the meaning of Beowulf. And he says, Beowulf is essentially a pagan worldview. It's got a lightweight Christian overtone on top, but the monsters win. Chaos and unreason win. Conan more or less agrees with that sentiment and kind of shrugs it off as not a big deal. He's like, I live, I laugh, I slaughter, I drink, I hoe, and that's good enough for me. Yeah. And then the Christian answer is the eucatastrophe. The Iluvatar saves the day at the end, right? But neither of them works without that steel of heroism at its core. And so the idea with heroic fantasy was strip it back to that core of heroism, right? What do Aragorn, Conan, and Beowulf all have in common, right? and they're men of great valor. They're men of incredible willpower. They're men dedicated to the pursuit of excellence, whatever they deem it to be, right? They're men who don't flinch from fear and suffering.
Okay.
And it's a worldview that has been lost, essentially, right? Like
agree.
we live in this world of where someone like Aragorn, Conan, or Beowulf, like imagine putting them down in a therapist, right? Like the therapist would have 16 different diagnoses of why these people are dysfunctional.
Yeah.
They're like, so let me see if I understand correctly. You could just live in Rivendell, but you prefer to wander namelessly through Middle Earth.
Yeah, and killing things,
like
the sword.
killing thing. And so anyway, and this was, by the way, I didn't start off like thinking like this was the case. This was like something I stumbled upon as I was working on the book, and then it all clicked for me.
Gotcha.
And so to make it work, the key insight to make it work was you have to dial down the level of magic to make sure that those men of steel can shine. Because if magic can solve all the problems, then there's no room for heroes like that. Basically, this is what we're doing right now. The internet destruction. That makes total sense, man. That makes total sense. And I think there's a slight difference between the two. You mentioned the Christianity and the heroism. The heroism of the old days, the Iliad, the Bronze Age, all that kind of, the Iron Age, you're talking about for personal gain and glory. Whereas the heroic thing in Tolkien in the Christian era was for the good of mankind, or Jesus, or whoever the hell your cause was, but it was something outside of yourself. Versus in the old times, it was for yourself, gold and glory and family and clan and honor and all that kind of stuff. So I think that maybe the focus of it is shifted. But that makes total sense. It's whatever the focus is. Right. And then you've got a little bit as well. You've got like that midway point of King Arthur, right?
Yeah.
Because you think about you think about like Lancelot is halfway between a pagan hero and a Christian hero, right? Like Lancelot hangs out at bridges and like challenges people to prove who's the bestest knight ever, right?
But,
right. Why does he do that? That's but it's because he wants to prove, his excellence, his arete.
That or tiny penis syndrome, one or the other.
Or he has a tiny penis, and that's also possible. But then you get just a little bit later in the Grail cycle, you get Galahad, and he's the perfect Christian hero, right? And so you can literally see that transition point. You could completely think Lancelot and Beowulf could have drinks together, and they would be chill. Conan would be in there, and likewise Aragorn and Galahad could hang out, and they'd be like, "Yeah, I get where you're coming from, bro." Like, they would be on the same page.
They would respect each other, but they wouldn't be buddies,
No, they wouldn't be buddies. And then Conan would think Galahad was a total dork. He'd be like, "Really? You're a virgin? Like, why are you questing? Like, what kind of man are you? What's motivating you here, bro?" No,
that makes total sense. I think that informs your philosophy of alignment, and good timing there with Elric and Cain and all that, because I in my past, I've always thought that the whole Law and Chaos came from Elric and Moorcock and all that, right? And then I read finally 3 Hearts and 3 Lions, because one of my little Substack things we're going to do is read all the Appendix N stuff and do a freaking book report to keep my brain active, and get a little traction there, like the old blog days, and that's where we first came across each other. But your take is that Gygax's alignment system is way more 3 Hearts and 3 Lions versus Moorcock's Elric stuff and the Eternal Champion, right? What is your argument? So. I don't disagree now that I've read it, but I'm curious how you think it. How do you compare the two, and why do you think that's the case?
Yeah, so
because all D&D talks involving the alignment arguments. So,
of course.
Dive in.
So Moorcock takes a position that you have law, chaos, and balance, right? And so law and chaos are in opposition. Too much law is bad. Too much chaos is bad, and then kind of balance is in the middle ground. Whereas 3 Hearts and 3 Lions is law versus chaos in a more Manichaean, way. The reason I think the former is where we want to be, for me, the way I got there was by studying ancient history. And if you look, if you go back, you look at the word cosmos, right? So a cosmos actually means an ordered universe. A cosmos means both order and creation. And it was cosmos versus chaos. So to an ancient Egyptian, if you tried to explain that balance between Ma'at and chaos, between Mott and Apophis was balance, they'd be like, no, that's crazy. Mott, order is balance. That's the proper balance of things. That's what makes it ordered. Chaos is the destruction of the proper balance. And the same would be true of, let's say, Zoroastrians in ancient Persia, where they have, Ahura Mazda and the rightly ordered universe, opposed by Ahriman, who's trying to bring in chaos. And you see this throughout all of Indo-European civilization. You see it in Sumerian civilization, Egyptian civilization. It's always, you have, the gods who bring order to the cosmos, and then opposed by the forces of destruction and chaos. And that's the through line that carries right into Three Hearts and Three Lions, and that in turn carries right into, I think, the earliest versions of Dungeons and Dragons. And so in ACKS, neutral isn't some sort of like holy balance where you're actually the good guy and the lawful guys are fascist. Neutral is Lando Calrissian, who's kind of like still hasn't quite shit and got off the pot, could go either way, or it's Boba Fett who will work whoever pays the bills or what. We can understand neutrality, like most people are neutral, but it's not
get by, work your 8 hours a day, get your paycheck, watch TV, go to bed, have a drink in a way. Neutrality. Okay. Now, as contrasted though to Elric's, Moorcock's point of view, how would you differentiate it, would you say? I know you said it's more of a cosmic thing on Elric, I think, at least, but how would you differentiate it?
So I think to get to the notion of law versus chaos, with law being bad, is very much, I think, I think of Elric as a 20th century deconstruction of the ancient worldview. Because in the ancient world, Ra or Ahura Mazda or whatever, like these gods of order and of law, they were good. They were archetypes. They were Platonic ideals. You looked up to them. They were flawless. And so what Elric does is they deconstruct it. He starts by showing chaos, and then he deconstructs chaos, and then Elric sides with law, and then he deconstructs law. And so and then he kind of introduces this kind of humanistic balance is where we're supposed to be. And that's fine, and it works really well for the story that he's trying to tell in Elric, because Elric is effectively a subversion and deconstruction of Conan in many ways. He's an anti-Conan story. He's the weak wizard who starts as an emperor and becomes a wanderer, kind of the reverse Conan. So I think it works in that context, just not where I want it to be for ACKS.
Yeah, I always thought of Elric as more of the anti-King Arthur. You get the big sword, but it's like cursed, and he's not a strong fighter. He's just weak. That sort of a thing. So I never looked at it in terms of the Conan comparison, but that does make a little bit of sense there, I think.
I mean, it's not. I didn't come up with that. I read that and another critic explained it. But yeah, apparently, like, the thought process was Conan was the huge, strong barbarian who starts with nothing and becomes a king, and Elric is the weakling who relies on magic and starts with everything and loses it all.
And then has to rebuild. Yeah, no, that makes sense. How I look at it, the alignment thing with chaos and law. Three Hearts, Three Lions always also had sort of law as good and chaos as bad, whereas Elric just looked at as two opposing forces in the universe. They're just clashing, constantly clashing, no matter what the life form was. There was no morality. It was just a clash, because law eventually becomes static and chaos becomes too destructive, right? And so I look at that and I wonder, where does neutrality fit in then for both systems? I mean, neutrality always like the lazy man's I don't give a shit approach, right? But if you have a belief in neutrality rather than a lack of belief, and that makes you neutral, how does that fit into it? What were you thinking?
Yeah. So I would say it's like this. In Elric's world, then having a belief in neutrality, he called it balance. He defines it as a cosmic force. In the Elric RPG, it shows up with its own powers and special benefits.
Yeah.
And it's clear that Moorcock thinks that's the good alignment.
Yeah.
Effectively, there's like neutral good, lawful evil, and chaotic evil in
that makes sense. That makes sense.
I would say in Three Hearts and Three Lions, there's not really any neutral as a cosmic force. There's law and chaos as cosmic forces, and they're in opposition. And neutral are people that kind of haven't figured out where they want to be, or they don't care, or they're mercenaries. And then ACKS more or less takes the same position. You've got lawful gods, you've got chaotic gods, and then there's like neutral powers, elemental forces, spirits, and things like that. But they're not organized pantheons, and nobody wakes up in the morning and says, "Today I'm going to die for neutrality."
Yeah. my little twist on that is like the whole Mother Nature approach. I look at druids and Mother Nature worship hippies. They're maybe more the neutral thing. They're more earth-centric, and therefore they'll die for certain principles that don't relate to other people's principles, perhaps. That's kind of where I look at neutrality. It was hard to fit in, with that approach, right? It really doesn't make a lot of sense in some cases. It has to be a very strict belief system in order to make neutrality work. But what about Lovecraft? Where's Cthulhu when all the Elder Torahs fit in? Is it beyond law and chaos? Or is it just true chaos? It's not entropy. What the hell is it then,
Yeah. So in ACKS, the way I've got it set up is that the forces of chaos are they're kind of Nietzschean. In the end, there can be only one dominant power who orders the universe to his will, and that's what chaos is, right? It's this kind of zero sum will to power, tyranny, etc. But there's also like almost like a meta chaos, which is the outer darkness, which are the ones that simply wish the annihilation of existence altogether.
Okay.
And they kind of exist outside of, and I think that's where you would put Cthulhu and those guys. Maybe maybe it's really hard to tell. They're inscrutable aliens,
Devourers of life. I kind of that's why I look at them. There's devour life. They're anti-life in some way, antimatter devouring matter. I guess maybe that's, and their minds are so different that it drives you insane to understand them. That's kind of more the way I look at it. You had said at one point that like 5e, you did this 5e ACKS comparison where you had comic books versus the Iliad and Beowulf. I want to sort of expand on that. That was very interesting. We didn't dive into it that much in the show I listened to. How would you describe that?
Oh, I'm trying to remember what I said. I think the point I was making is that characters in 5e are more like fantasy superheroes in terms of their powers.
Yes, that was it.
Yeah. It's just the default way characters are built. They're more like X-Men. Everybody's got cool special powers, and
from level
can you can morph through walls or fly or do teleports or change shape. Like everybody is doing all this special stuff. In that's fine. Like I don't begrudge anyone who wants to play fantasy superheroes, but in ACKS I wanted, how to put it? So in ACKS, I wanted the culmination of the game to transition into, or at least potentially transition into, a massive tabletop war game where you could have thousands of soldiers fighting thousands of soldiers.
Yeah.
Well, there's no point in bringing thousands of soldiers to a battle against Superman, because Superman can defeat any number of soldiers. And so in order for there to be mass battles with thousands of soldiers, the heroes and the villains both need to be sufficiently limited in power and their ability to project power that those massive armies can matter. So if you think about like the Lord of the Nazgul, obviously a very powerful being. He can terrify mere mortals. When he lands, he drives away a whole company of Rohirrim cavalry, and he kills the king of Rohan. But he's not Superman, right? He doesn't like go and blow 100,000 people away with his super breath. Or he's not Magneto and just flinging people like this around.
There's no movable walls of fire across the battlefield at his will, basically wiping out thousands of troops in one swath.
Exactly. And so the reason 5e can't really have mass combat in the sense that ACKS can have mass combat is that you just would never have that in 5e, because the godlike superhumans of that world would make it irrelevant. You would never have armies like that. You might have small troops of commandos. You might have the equivalent of jet fighters and things like that. Atomic weapons, kind of magical equivalents there, but you wouldn't have pitched battle. So with ACKS, what I try to do is dial the magic up as powerful as it could be, without eliminating mass pitched battles.
Gotcha. I've always thought about that in terms, I've been having this argument for decades with my brother and everybody else we play D&D with. We take this medieval setting, right? Fantasy England, whatever the hell you want to call it, right? This medieval setting, and then you drop, everything is the same. You got castles, you got armies, you got archers, and blah, 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 blah. Everything's the same as medieval ages, and then you add magic of D&D on top of that. You add fireballs and walls of fire. You add scrying, you add fly spells, you add invisibility, you add, massive fireballs. It's essentially, when you have a wizard of decent enough power in D&D, you have an invisible stealth B2 bomber constantly dropping shit on people, right?
Yep.
And so if you got this stealth B2, just like boom, 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 you wouldn't have developed castles, because castles are developed for armies coming at you, not armies dropping goddamn fireballs on. And add dragons in, forget about it. All right.
That's right.
I don't care how damn strong your thing is. You got a dragon coming in and just doing a shoulder crush into your keep walls or whatever, your towers. So it's an anomaly. Having castles, because it's medieval, and adding magic and dragons and monsters, oh my, it just didn't make any sense to me. But it's the thing we all do because that's what we like.
Yeah.
Right. You just got to overlook it. You know, verisimilitude only goes so far, I guess.
Yeah. No. And basically, you know, there's two routes you can take on that. Is one, you can just hand wave it, and you're just like, well, you know, it doesn't matter. The castles are they're just cosmetic backdrops, because we're never going to do mass combat, so who cares? They're just scenery in the background. Or you can kind of think it through, and what I did was I thought it through, and then I dialed the magic back far enough that you still have the castles, you still have the big armies, which isn't to say that there aren't mages sufficiently powerful to destroy a castle. There are.
Yeah.
But the difference is, if you look at if you look at the density with which castles were built, right? Like there's some places in Wales where there's a castle every 6 miles. Okay.
Yeah.
Or if you look at my setting, or you look at the Roman Empire, where you had forts all over the place, right? So there's a lot of these castles, a lot of forts. There are a lot more of them than there are mages capable of destroying a fort. Right.
Yeah.
And so that's why there's so much people like, Alex, why did you spend so much time working on the demographics of wizards in ACKS? Like, do we really need to know how many 13th level wizards there are? And the answer is yes, you actually do, because that will tell you whether castles get built.
Absolutely.
And whether or not castles get built will tell you how war is fought, and on and on and on.
Thank you.
So,
thank you. Yes.
Yeah.
Everybody,
you actually do need to know all of that. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. I've already bust my balls about the detail I put into it, but that's exactly why I do it.
That's right.
My thing that I've been saying, because I don't start with theory. I start with the ground up and work up to a theory. That's why when I read your book, you know, this is like, yes, he gets it. He's articulating my gut vibe with this book, you know, the Arbiter of Worlds book, you know, and it's like all this stuff that I've actually underlined sections in here and highlighted and all that, you know, it's like this fits. But the same thing with like the Sly Farish's book, you know, it just makes some sense, you know. But I've been arguing this thing for the longest time. But my point is always started with a more crude version of, where do the orcs take a shit? You know,
exactly.
You got a mega dungeon with 1,000 rooms. How do they eat? Where do they get their water? Where do they take a shit without having? The answer is wherever they want their works, right? But you get my point.
I do.
You know, it has to make sense. That's why I don't agree with mega dungeons now at this age, where I loved them when I was a kid, because it's endless rooms of killing shit and taking their stuff. All right, it's a more mature version of it, you know. But you're big into the verisimilitude thing, which I am. You know, that makes total sense. I think, you know, where does that come from? Where does that come from in you think? And how does it apply into ACKS?
Yeah, so I talked about this a little bit in Arbiter of Worlds on my Substack and in my videos, but so everybody's familiar with the concept of suspension of disbelief, right?
Yes.
Suspension of disbelief means that you have to pretend not to know things that you know in order to enjoy the experience, right? So I know in real life that this isn't how knights actually fought, and you couldn't cleave through plate armor with swords. So I'm going to forget that in order to enjoy this Hollywood action scene of knights fighting other knights where they're cleaving through plate armor. Right?
Yeah, as you said, you can't use a 12-foot pole arm in a 5-foot wide corridor, right? That sort of,
So what I realized is that there's the opposite, right? And I call it the noetic appreciation of verisimilitude. And it's the opposite of suspension of disbelief. And what it is, it's when you are able to enjoy something more because of what you know. So instead of having to turn off what you know in order to enjoy it, you're able to enjoy it more because you turn on what you know. And so what I aim for in all my games and all my works is I want to reward the noetic appreciation of verisimilitude. So I want the game to be completely fun for someone who knows nothing about ancient combat or the Roman Empire or the Middle Ages. Like, great, sit down, you'll have a blast, everything plays. But if you do know, then you sit there and you're like, this is so fucking good.
So it's on 2 levels. Basically, you're doing a 2-level game here.
Exactly.
It's like the old Batman TV series. You watch it as a kid, you laugh your ass off. You watch it as an adult, especially with a little something in you. It's the greatest TV show of all time.
Right. That's
I bought
right.
it on
That's
DVDs
right.
just so I could sit back and laugh my ass off of the old Batman series. You know, it's just, yeah, I get it. I get it. I get it. That makes total sense. And guys, Alex, I warned him ahead of time for all my regular viewers. So everybody on Alex's show maybe not know me or doesn't know us about me, but I have the weakest bladder on the face of the earth. I warned him. He says, "Oh, thank God," because I do too. And so we have a pre-agreed upon 1 hour break. We're not going to break for an hour, but we're each going to go take a leak right now. And we'll be right back in 1 minute. Hold your marks, guys. We'll be back. And I beat him back. Either he has a longer walk or I pee faster. I got a tinier bladder. One or the other. Oh, God. Hope you guys are enjoying this. This is a really cool thing. And by the way, guys, down below in my description, you will see links to all of Alex's stuff. Okay. His YouTube page, his Discord server, his Twitter page, or X, I guess you call it now, his X page. Everything that you want, even his drive-through links to drive-through books you could purchase, and his Amazon, you know, you could pick up Arbiter of Worlds on Amazon, books off a drive-through. So if you're new to Alex, all of the links to all of his stuff.
All right.
All right. I would just tell everybody, links in my description to all of your stuff: Discord, YouTube, Facebook, homepage, Substack.
Oh, awesome.
You got drive-through RPG links in there too.
Awesome.
And because you're populating this, you're streaming to yours, Alex. If you look on Alex's channel, my description is in there, so you may want to delete that later, Alex. All my person, you know, here's links to Joe's shit. You probably don't want that in yours, but you know, so.
No, of course, man. I thought we're doing that synergy thing, right?
We are, yeah. That's true. That is true. So yeah. So check out all the links below, guys, and for both of us and anybody who's on my group. Let's see. I'm curious. We got 72 viewers now. We got. Nice. Yeah, you beat me out. You got 30 watching on your channel, 29 on my channel. We got a dozen who have watched at one point or other on Twitter. So we're doing pretty good here, guys. So anybody who's a subscriber to me, go over to Alex's channel. Link is below, and check it out and subscribe because good stuff on there, especially as to this book, Arbiter of Worlds. He has a great video series where he gets into this book. He goes through it and does an oral explanation. Pretty much, I think it was like every chapter, wasn't it, Alex?
Yeah, I did. I ended up doing the whole book. Yeah. Then I stopped doing. Then I stopped doing YouTube videos. I was like, well, said everything I had to say.
I'm complete. That's good, man.
Dropped the mic, walked off. Yeah.
That was it. There was a couple parts of this book I wanted to jump into because I thought they were fantastic. They're like, I circled it, put a little stars. I was like, this is just good, you know. So you're talking about the mega settings. You are like me in that you start from top down when you're designing your world, and then you fill in the gaps, basically. You know, I so agree. Tim and I were doing this little adventure. Tim Shorts and I, Gothers Man. You know Tim, right? We're doing this adventure writing thing together. And I realized how different my mind works than him. He's like, let's start at the rock and build up into the adventure. And I'm like, we need to know the cosmological balance of forces before we get drilled down to the fucking rock, right? This is my approach, right? So you do pretty much the same thing I'm doing here. Is like you wrote, after establishing, I forgot I got the glasses again while I was peeing. After establishing the mega setting, the next step is to write a 2-page backstory to accompany it with a timeline of major events. For a fantasy campaign, a good backstory needs to provide for the following historical periods: recent history, modern history, classical history, and ancient history, and forgotten history. Recent is what's happened so recently that people are still talking about it. An invasion of orcs or a discovery of gold in the hills. Modern history is the history of the dominant culture in your setting. Classical history is the history of the culture that directly led into the modern one. For instance, in the Dark Ages Europe setting, classical history would be the Roman civilization directly preceding the fall. Ancient history is the history of the culture prior to the classical. Forgotten history is the secrets that no one living remembers. I generally do a paragraph for each. That's so fucking perfect. Well said. And it just summarizes, like I said, the gut shit in my head. That like, yes, these are the two things I marked off here where I literally yelled out, yes, this is it. You know, is that how you approached your setting too? I know you based a lot on Rome and all that. And is that how you approach it though? Is that how you designed it?
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it is. In fact, a lot of that book got written because I was coming back to D&D in 2008. I decided I kind of wanted to get back and sort of run a big sprawling D&D campaign like I had done when I was younger. And so I started, expanding on my campaign. I was taking notes as I was doing it. And at the time I was running The Escapist, and I thought, I think what I'm doing here could be really interesting to people. Like maybe I should do like an article series kind of explaining my methodology. And so it was called Check for Traps, and it was a multi-part series on The Escapist. And then after I sold The Escapist and then Defy went out of business, all the articles became unavailable. But I had retained all the rights to my RPG work. At least that was the one thing I kept the rights to when I sold.
Good.
And so I pulled them all together and I made it into a book.
So
and kind of
do you have I Hit It With My Axe? Do you have the rights to all those, or is that with the
No, that I do not. That wasn't mine. That was I was not the writer. I wasn't the director. So
does Zach have it, or does the Escapist have it?
It's a long, complex story.
I don't want to dive into NDA stuff. I don't,
Yeah, the gist of it was that the rights reverted to Defy Media. Zach went ahead with the show regardless. Defy Media didn't sue him over it, and then they went out of business. And I don't think anyone cares anymore.
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, I at one point I downloaded. There's somewhere on my OneDrive account that I have all these episodes. We're talking about here is Zach Sabbath. YouTuber, or not YouTuber, he was more of a blogger back then, and a writer. He did a video series called "I Hit It With My Axe," the D&D with porn stars, guys. So we played with a bunch of porn stars and strippers and one hairdresser, I think. And it was an interesting series. I really enjoyed it because back then it was the early OSR days, and I was the kind of a weird guy who I had only played D&D with my people, my brother, my friends, a very contained group. I never went to cons or anything like that. And so when I could see somebody else play D&D and realize that I kind of do that too, or I can learn from this, you don't feel like, wow, I'm doing this all wrong. I wonder if I'm doing it right. You just realize, you see, wow, they do it like this too. I guess I'm doing something right. I feel better about it, Yeah. It was kind of nice to see. And then Google Plus kicked in and we all started playing online together with Google Hangouts and all that. It was a perfect fucking segue to that. And the whole Flail Snails thing happened. And that was just a great time. It was really until, of course, all things degenerate into toxic bullshit, so everybody's a Yahtzee and a fascist. But, until then, it was a great time.
Until then. Yeah. And that show was ahead of its time because it predated the rise of the actual play shows.
Absolutely.
And predated Critical Role. It was really ahead of its time.
Yeah.
It broke a lot of stereotypes about what it was to be a D&D player. So, Zach and I had a falling out afterwards, and there's all sorts of kind of water under the bridge at this point. But I'm still really proud of the fact we did that show.
No, it was a good show. I really enjoyed it. The first few episodes were written in a sort of a fast-paced clip here, clip there, clip here, and then it really, after that, I guess there was a dispute as to how they wanted to format it, and I guess he went out and he decided they were going to do more of we're going to watch an episode of something. And then I got to say, I enjoyed that a little bit better because you could see it. It wasn't just a music video. It was more of a TV show, I guess is the best way.
I enjoyed that more too. And that was based on audience feedback. The audience was like, look, we don't, we're here at The Escapist. We're relatively smart. We don't want MTV videos. We kind of just want to enjoy the actual gameplay.
Yeah. See what happens. Get into the drama of it all.
So it kind of transitioned from a almost like a reality TV fast cut vibe to just much more of the way we kind of people do those sort of shows nowadays. So
no, it was really good. It was really good, man. Here's my other holy shit. I love this moment. All right, another thing I underlined and crossed and circled. And all that stuff. All right, so this is the best thing I've ever. I never even thought about this until you said it, and then I realized it was like this light bulb thing, because people bust my balls. Anytime you watch Eric's video, he mentions my game. It's 2E campaign because I promise there's going to be a 2E campaign by the book, but I'm a house ruler, right? I have to house rule.
Yep.
I promised no house rules, and then I broke my promise within the first 3 pages of the fucking PHP. So I started house ruling. right? And so you wrote this here. It says rules light games are just games that haven't been played a lot yet, right? And it says it's common to call games like basic fantasy, which heavily depend on a GM's judgment calls, rules light games. In contrast, the rules heavy games like Pathfinder, which provide exhaustive mechanics. Yeah, Pathfinder sucks. But with our deeper understanding of common law and civil law, this may be why I got into it here, me a law geek, we can see that a game master's ruling is functionally a law, just like a game designer's rule is a law. Every rules-light game will, over time, become heavier with rules as its judge makes decisions about how things work. Rules light and rules heavy are only descriptive of the starting state of the game. Perfect. That being the case, when you're running a long-term campaign, you should remember that every time you issue a ruling, you have added to the common law of the game design. You should write down your rulings and apply them again to similar situations in the future, or distinguish them from prior rulings to explain why they aren't being applied. Precedent. The very best game masters do this so consistently that over time their long-running campaigns begin to develop an entire body of house rules covering the many special situations that have arisen in their campaigns. Sometimes an entirely new RPG develops, which is what I'm doing, because I got tired of them busting my balls. Greg, you motherfucker out there listening, why don't you write my own game? All right, I am going to write my own game. Here we go. I mean, so I got a 5-year plan based on exhaustive house rules of every game I've ever run. You know, but that is perfect. And I think that's how you started yours too, right? Is that the genesis of ACKS? What was your base system? What did you use?
BX.
BX? Okay. All right. BX or it had to be BX. OSR wasn't Labyrinth Lord wasn't out yet, right? You were doing it.
Yeah, it started as BX, and then but I published it using the Labyrinth Lord and the OGL license. But yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I have
this book here. Yeah.
The first one. The first one, yeah. I actually think that was my biggest insight in that whole book. So I'm really glad you liked it. Yeah.
That's the one that gobsmacked me. I was like, yes, because I never thought about it before, but it made so much damn sense. It made so much damn sense.
Yeah, and I think it also explains a lot why we've had so many rules light games when you realize that the typical player's campaigns only last about 8 to 10 sessions nowadays.
Yes.
If you're only playing 8 to 10 sessions, the number of sort of special or unusual circumstances that are going to come up is not that big. The number of times the repeated rulings are going to come up is not that big. And so a rules light game is perfectly serviceable for that.
Yes.
But you literally cannot play a rules light game for a 200 session multi-year campaign.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you tried, it wouldn't be rules light by the end of it. It just would not be. And I know this from experience because I did it with BX. Yes. And people are like, no, Alex, that's not true, man. The GM can just, he can just improvise each ruling as needed on the spot. It's like, no, you actually cannot do that if you want to be a good game master. And I give the example.
Piss everybody off.
You'll piss imagine the party needs to leap across the cliff. And so Jim comes up to the cliff and he's like, I leap across the cliff. And you're like, okay, make a dex check. You need to roll the D20 less than your dexterity. And he's like, okay, well, I've got dexterity 12. I need to roll 12 or less. I made it. So then the thief is like, oh, well, I have dexterity 18. I'll jump across the cliff. And the GM says, oh, make a paralysis saving throw.
Yeah.
What the fuck?
Yeah, what the hell, man?
You said it was a dex check to jump across the cliff. And I mean, is the GM going to be like, well, it's not actually a rule in the book. That was just a ruling, and now I'm making a new ruling. Like, you can't do that,
Yeah. You're a dick. I mean, bottom line, you're a dick.
You'd be a dick. You'd be a bad judge. You'd be unfair. And so you've created a ruling. You stick with your ruling, and do that enough, and now you've created a mechanic. When you come to a 20-foot chasm, you need to make a dex check to jump across it. And you build on that. You build on that. You build on that. So. Yeah,
I'm convinced that that's where feats came from. I know they're in second edition, they were called something else, but everybody calls them a feat, right? It's something you can purchase or buy. I'm convinced that every single feat in existence, the original ones, came from some DM saying, yeah, you could try that. The swinging on chandelier thing, let's say, for example, right? And then you come down and swap, blah, 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 and you got +3 to hit because you swung off a thing, you're +3 to hit. All right, so next thing you know, I want to do that +3 to hit thing again. And then they do it every fucking time. Right? They're just repeating it because it worked before. And then a DM's like, well, you know what? This again, everybody's swinging off of chandeliers now all of a sudden. Nobody's doing regular combat because I made this thing up. I need to somehow separate this thing so now it's not available all the time, but you need to earn the right to do it. Maybe a certain time of day, a certain amount of times a day, or certain circumstances. And so I think that the derivation of feats is that.
I agree.
House rules that gave a certain power or ability that people wanted to use over and over again because they were so good. So you got to limit it in some way.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you have certain ones in your book too. A lot of are they called feats? I forget. Are they now feats?
Proficiencies. We call them
Proficiencies. Okay. Yeah. Where did you get yours? Where did they all come from? Is that the same thing, or is that something you just like scavenged from other systems?
So the earliest ones were scavenged, actually.
Yeah.
There was a guy named BX Blackrazor who
Yeah.
had
Yeah.
published a blog article where he was like, "Hey, here's some cool feats that you could use in
Yeah.
BX," and I was like, "Oh, these are great." So I threw those in there. Others, what I did is I went through the list of all the specialists in the
Yep.
expert rulebook, the blue rulebook,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it had like armorer and et cetera, et cetera. And so I said for each of those specialists, I made up a proficiency, and it was like if you have this proficiency, you can do what this specialist does.
Yes.
Um, and then once I had made those, I was like, well, this, if you've got if you've got merchants, it implies the existence of craftsmen. If you've got craftsmen,
Mhm.
it implies, so then I kind of added more.
Yes.
And so then I said, well, now I've got all these other feats. I need to have a system for how you acquire them. And then once you acquire them, then I was like, well, you'll want to have this and that. And it kind of blew up from there. So.
Yeah, that makes total sense. I've in my own house rules, and in the eventual RPG, I've snagged some shit from yearbooks. Like Castles and Crusades, like everybody steals from everybody, and then you put it all together, a nice little collage of an RPG. It's kind of the old school way. And that's what we do. And the cool thing about the OSR is that we're all cool like that. I've never met a real asshole who's like really an OSR guy. I've met some new people to the OSR who are assholes, but all the OG guys are just cool people. Every one of them are around to play with, play a game with. And then I go to cons and whatnot. Yeah, right. Isn't it? The old blog days and everything else, the early 2000s. I mean, it's a whole different group, a whole different crew, a different vibe. You're right. Man, it's nice, and every one of them I'd have a beer with or roll dice with. Every damn one of them. Even the controversial ones,
Yeah. I feel like a lot of, I don't know, the internet tends to bring out the worst of people in terms of their, including myself. Like there are people that I've seen on the internet and thought, man, that guy's a real son of a bitch. And then I met them at a con and I played a game with them and had a delightful time. And we were just drinking and having good. And you'd never make the connection with like, wow. I think some folks, they almost see like Twitter or whatnot. It's like turn-based combat RPG to them. They're just, it's not who they really are. They're just RPing an asshole on the internet. So.
You said something in one interview I thought was really interesting, because I've kind of had this thought in my head because I heard it from this guy, Rob. He does this show called Robservations. He does a lot. He was a Hollywood dude. I don't know if you ever heard of him. Robert Meyer Burnett. It's an interesting guy. He works in Hollywood. He's done some low-level stuff and whatnot, but he's got some connections. And he talks about, in a very interesting, well-educated, well-read way, everything that's going on out there. And he talks about the new authenticity is going to be the new coin of the realm for YouTube and for in a world where everything is bullshit, right? And everything could be AI, and you don't know what's real and what's not. And everybody's posing on Instagram Reels and posing on TikTok and putting bullshit up on Facebook that makes it look like they're living this life that they're not. Like people crave authenticity, and he thinks that that's going to be the coin of the realm. And you had mentioned in a video that when you worked at an online magazine, I think it was something like you found that there's the authentic people and they have their group, and then there's the fake assholes and they have their group. And if a authentic guy goes fake, he loses his peeps and vice versa, right? Is that the case? Did I hear that right?
Sounds like something I would say, but I don't really remember the context of it anymore. I'm afraid I would be being fake if I pretended to. So I don't remember saying. But it does sound like something I would come up with.
It was. You said it was based on a study not the Escapist, but a different place you worked. You found that essentially, if people who are authentic.
Yeah. So I remember now. So that was at Defy Media. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, they did. So they did a study on what makes for successful YouTubers, and there's basically it was that there was a relatability, and then kind of like admirability, right? So like they're just like me, or I want to be like them, right?
Okay.
And so the relatability folks, they're low key. It's kind of low res. You feel like you're just having a conversation with them, like we're doing, right? Very authentic. Yeah. And then the more aspirational is the ones where it's like the private jet and the fancy clothes and the Instagram accounts. Yeah. And it's exactly the case, right? Yeah. If you go, they have different audiences, and if you try and go from one to the other, you lose your your brand. Yes.
The polished people, like the Guy Sklanders type. I would look, not that I don't know whether he's authentic or not, but he's not a guy that I'm like, I could sit out at a dive bar and have a beer with him all damn night. He's not that kind of a guy, right?
Right.
And people who know me in person could tell you this is me, whether I'm here or at a bar or at a family function or wherever the hell I'm at work. This is me. You know, I mean, I curse as much in certain places, but this is pretty much how I am. You know, I think I can't be anything else because it's too hard to keep up with the bullshit if I was, you know, so it's easier to be this way. But I think that it was interesting that if you change over, you're going to lose your core audience because the people like you for who you are. Then you come across as being a phony poser, you know, which is, you know, pretty interesting, I think, you know?
Yeah. And I think it's, where it gets tough on the YouTubers. Like we would see this at Defy. So like for a while I managed these guys called Smosh who were really big in millennials and Gen Z for a bit. And they started Smosh when they were in high school.
Smosh?
Yeah, Smosh. SMOSH. They used to be very, very big. They literally started their channel when they were in high school. And for a period of time, they were the largest YouTube channel in the world. They were bigger than Mr. Beast. Mr. Beast looked up to Smosh.
Wow.
And but like their whole shtick was that they were just like normal bros who were best friends from high school who were doing funny shit on the internet. And it's like really tough to be a normal bro who's just doing funny shit with his bros when also you're like this wealthy YouTube superstar who's got the largest YouTube channel in the world. And so like it almost self-destructs you because your life experiences become hard to relate to.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Is there anybody who was that you know of or saw any studies who were like the fancy polished people who tried to get legit and just didn't do it or failed at it? You ever hear anything like that? I'm wondering how it will go.
You know, it's interesting. You do see some folks who do it. The ones that make a go of it, it's usually because either they've had a political conversion of some sort, or they've had like they've been canceled and they've had to rebuild. But like for an example, would be Russell Brand, who went from being a fairly high tier comic, you know, who was a fairly high lister star, and now he has like a YouTube channel which is pretty raw. And you know, you can look at Russell Brand, you can see Russell Brand's been through some shit lately. So that would be an example of a guy who transitioned from, I think, aspirational to relatable.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, it worked. I mean, it's still there.
And he still gets shit. A lot of people say, oh, he's just fake or he's a grifter or whatever. But like, that's an example of a guy I think who's mostly made that transition.
He's got to survive. He's got to keep his lifestyle going somehow, you know? I mean, he's got to do what he's got to do, right? At some point.
Yeah.
Dude, we got a super chat here from somebody from, let's see, a super chat from Jacob Letourneau. Who I pronounced that right. Says, $10. He says, we'll be cutting a promo on Dunder Moose next Wednesday, but if you don't have any plans for Saturday, June 21st, keep it open. My next big Braunstein, you, the bros, Harmony, etc. all invited again. I don't know who that is, but it sounds like a personal thing to you. So there you go.
Cool.
You paid $10 to me to let you know. So appreciate that, man. And any super chats, feel free, kick them in. You know, that's helped pay the damn bills for the stupid software I'm using here, which is not bad. I guess you gotta say it's not bad. Yeah. All right. So what is your take on AI? I know you said you don't mind it. You would use it. You have used it in some cases.
I do
right?
use it. Yeah.
Yeah. So what is your? I mean, I know there's the whole legal ramifications of my gut is that I'm not going to use that shit until there's a court case that decides that I can use that shit, right? And eventually that'll happen because the business interests are going to make it happen. They're going to pick the right court, you know how it is, pick the right court, pick the right judge, maneuver that case all the way through that it makes the perfect precedent, right? So they're going to eventually get that done. But until then, I'm a little leery about doing it. Where are you? I mean, you come down with it, I don't give a shit. I'm going to do it, right?
Oh man, So I've actually been blogging about AI a lot on my political blog, Tree of Woe, which is sort of separate.
I didn't know you had one.
Yeah, I have a separate political blog. It's called Contemplations on the Tree of Woe, where I just kind of like write about whatever depressing topics of philosophy, culture, etc. Have
a Substack thing.
Yeah, it's on Substack. Yeah,
all right. I didn't know you had that. Good to know. I'll subscribe.
Well, you know, I try not to like push my politics into my games. Like I keep them separate. I'm not one of those people who wants to think like, oh, you know, if you're going to play my games, you have to agree with me politically or vice versa. Like I don't really give a shit what people believe.
When the dice show up, the politics goes away. You just have fun.
Exactly. Yeah. So, but you know, I also I studied law, I studied history, I've studied philosophy, so I have a lot of really strong views, and I just have a blog where I talk about them. So I've been really weighing in on AI lately, and I have a couple thoughts there. So
I didn't know I hit on a good hot topic here. I was just throwing it out there. This is good. All right, we're gonna sit back here.
Yeah. So, like, pragmatically speaking, ain't nobody stopping the train.
No,
right?
no, absolutely,
Okay.
totally
So,
agree.
And I really mean this. So, right now, the U.S. has 12 times as many data centers as China, right? So we're in great power competition against China,
Yeah.
and they've got stronger shipbuilding capacity than us. They've got stronger steel building capacity than us. They have a ton of advantages now because we deindustrialized. But what we do have is we have the advantage in AI and we have the advantage in data centers. And so from the highest levels, you're seeing it from the White House, you're seeing it from Congress, like the powers that be in the United States know that we have to win the AI race if we're going to stay on top of the game. And so they're going to make sure that AI gets promoted. And it is a done deal. In the corridors of power, it is a done deal.
It's just
and
a matter of waiting for the right case, right? I mean, the right precedent, that's all it's going to come down to.
And anybody who thinks it's not is fooling themselves. And I don't, you might be an idealist, you might have great hopes for the future, whatever. So the AI train is not going to get stopped, right? There's simply the fate of the country from the point of view of our leaders depends upon it. Moreover, like the history of technological innovation has been new technology gets introduced, lots of people lose their jobs, there's great soul searching and despair, and at the end of the day, nobody cares because now they have cheap whatever.
Yeah.
And the chair that I sit upon, at one time, chairs were handmade by craftsmen. The table that I have my keyboard on, at one time, tables were handmade by craftsmen. The glass that I'm drinking out, at one time, glass blowers were a highly respected artisanal craft. Now I got this for $3 at Walmart.
Dollar store, man, dollar store for this one. Yeah,
so,
bingo.
Yeah, and no one cares, right? Like at no point do I sit around and think to myself, "Wow, by drinking out of this, I've put artisanal glass blowers out of business." And
it's true.
And I say this as someone I can literally see what I do for a living slowly being automated, right? Like I've spent years of my life perfecting the craft of writing, and on a bad day, AI is a better writer than me right now.
Yeah.
Okay, and that it just is what it is. But that genie ain't going back in the bottle unless it goes back in the bottle because it's a post-nuclear apocalypse.
Yeah.
Which leads to the second point. We might be heading for an AI apocalypse, right? Like
happy time, happy talk.
We don't understand what the hell we're dealing with.
Sarah Connor knew.
So one of my very best friends, and in fact, one of the players in my ACKS campaign, is a PhD in machine learning. He has an AI startup, and his AI startup is on intelligible AI. So he's created an AI system that, unlike neural networks, you actually know why it's making the decisions it's making, and you can verify and audit every decision all the way through the chain of thought very clearly. Whereas AIs are total black boxes. LLMs and neural networks are total black boxes. You can kind of have some idea of maybe why it did what it do, but it can deceive you, and et cetera. And he's been out, knocking on the doors, trying to make this happen. And progress not very good, because a lot of the powers that be actually really like the fact that the AI is a black box. They'd much rather that no one actually know what's going on under the hood, because then they have plausible deniability for when things go wrong. Like, why would we want to know that it was our fault that the driverless cars?
There's that secret CIA training kicking in again. There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
So from looking at that, you can see, like, basically we're unleashing governance over our digital lives to these technologies that are super smart that we don't really understand,
and our privacy and information and everything else about us.
Yeah.
Done.
So, like, there's part of me that says, wow, this is really stupid. Like, we probably should not do that, but we're going to do it anyway. And so then there's the third part of me that says, okay, well, given these two facts, like, A, it's happening, B, probably shouldn't happen. What does one do in that circumstance? And it's funny. I, at one point in my life, had an opportunity to be part of a venture that was doing virtual currency for massively multiplayer games. They had figured out that people were willing to pay money to level up and get cool assets and things like that. And so they were doing a virtual currency business for massive multiplayer games. And there was such outrage, and people were like, oh my God, this is going to be so destructive of the hobby. And I can't believe this. And it ruins video games. And no one will ever do this. And you're a horrible person for even thinking about it. And I was like, gosh, I don't want to be a horrible person. And I don't want to do that. And so I turned it down. I didn't do the deal. I walked away. And all those people are billionaires now. And everyone I know spends virtual currency to play their video games and doesn't even think twice about it. It's just the way it is. And I'm like, great, I'm poor because I took a moral stand. And 20 years later, the people I took the moral stand for are paying the people that I could have been working with a lot of money. So kind of like my life experience has been, there's very little reward for being the guy who says, yeah, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to take the high road. So at this point in my life, I'm just using AI as a tool. I'm like, if I don't use it, I will get crushed and destroyed by the people who do use it. I don't want to be crushed and destroyed, so I'm going to use it.
That makes sense. I mean, I'm torn between, because here's the thing: most people don't know artists. They just get through life and just get along with whatever we got to do. But here in the RPG scene and the public, especially with you and whoever's publishing RPGs, you know artists, you know them personally, you're friends with them, you know them for decades, maybe, right? You've bought works from them, you've bought art from them. Their stuff adorns your covers of your great best-selling books, right? And then you're sitting there saying, hey, Bill, I don't need your shit no more because I just spent 50 cents to get something that's equally as good versus $500 from you. And you feel like a shithead, right? I mean, I don't know anything you do. I mean, just people, right? It's a personal feeling. You feel like you're gutting somebody's career. They invested their entire life into this thing. They practice like the glass blowers. They're becoming obsolete, right? So this is like, I get the moral conundrum, but at the end of the day, I think that AI, like Thanos, it's inevitable, right? It's just going to happen. It's going to happen, and people will lose their careers. People will lose their income, and I'm not unsympathetic, but like you said, if you want to compete, if you want to make a living at this gig, it's getting harder and harder to compete, right? And the big guys are going to come in, like, look what Wizards of the Coast been doing. You got fucking Pinkertons and every other goddamn thing making your life difficult on that front, right? The OGL crisis on that front, you're just fucking with people. So you're constantly assaulted by nonsense out there, just trying to make a goddamn buck to pay the bills and keep your kids in clean underwear, for fuck's sake, right? And you got to deal with this nonsense. And so people are going to do what they're going to do. It is inevitable. They're going to use it. I think people are just going to get to that point where they swallow their morals, for whatever you want to call it, right? And just move along.
I mean, what I did, for ACKS II, ACKS II, I spent more money on art than every prior book that I had made put together, right?
It's great art too.
The art budget for ACKS II is larger than the entire art budget for every book of ACKS I.
Yeah.
And it is filled with as much art as I could afford and still, pay my mortgage. But at the same time, it was a 1,500-page book. And so despite all the art that I purchased, I still had blank spaces. And so then I went in and I wrote tons of lore entries. And so I wrote hundreds of entries of like little encyclopedia lore entries to fill up that white space. I still had white space left. And I said, okay, well, at that point, I'm going to go ahead and put some AI art in there. Right.
You did,
because I'd rather have some AI art than just have blank spaces entirely. And I'm out of budget. I don't feel bad. Like, I spent literally, as I said, I spent as much as I could afford. I put the best art I could. I worked with as many artists as I could. There's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages of paid art in there. And then, you know what? Instead of filler art, basically what I could have done, I could have used the filler art that I purchased and that everyone has seen before and that I've used in all my prior books. I could have reused that. I'm like, So,
Yeah, no, it makes sense, man. And that's what's good. That what you described, that train of thought went through your head. Eventually, everybody in the RPG industry, in the scene, is going to be doing that, thinking that, and coming to that conclusion. I think it's just an inevitability. It's just how it's going to be.
Yeah, and I think what will happen is there will be a place for, just like, my mother might go out and actually buy artisanal glass bone glasses because that's the sort of person she is. And I think there will still be a place for that, and that will be valuable. But but at the end of the day, like, do I think that, like, the average 30-second commercial that I see at the start of a YouTube video is going to be handmade anymore? No. Ad agencies are just going to use AI to make that, right?
Exactly.
Like, Do I think that the typical voiceover that shows up on some drug commercial where they read
Hmm.
the side effects caused by Cialis, do I think that's
Hmm.
going to be a human voice actor anymore? No, that's just going to be
Yeah.
AI. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. There's a YouTube show I listen to, and this guy has his own voice overdubbed by the voice of Saruman. And it's just fantastic to listen to Saruman talk about weird, culty, ancient mystery crap.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
love
yeah,
it.
totally.
You
Right.
know?
Super fun. Yeah.
It's perfect.
Yeah.
It's the perfect voice, So, I don't know if he'll probably get busted or not someday. I don't know. I mean, Lord of
I
the
don't
Rings,
know.
if he hasn't risen to the level of a notoriety where they could come after him, but there it is. I mean, this is the new future, right? And again, more reason why authenticity is the new coin in the realm, I think, because people want, the more AI out there, the more people are going to crave something real and authentic. And so I can see people saying AI through the book, but the cover is made by John Smith, the real artist. I can
Yeah.
see that being a thing. Some level of compromise for your audience. You know what I mean? To have some purity in there somewhere or another. But that's pretty much the way it's going to be, I think.
And when you think about it, like in a sense, we've already been living in an AI world for a long time.
Yeah.
Consider like Tom Clancy, right? Like today, you can go buy Tom Clancy novels, even though Tom Clancy is dead.
Yeah.
But they've just turned him into a brand, right? So it's like
Yeah.
a Tom Clancy novel by John Smith, right?
Yeah.
Well, what difference does it make to me if John Smith or if AI Tom Clancy writes my Tom Clancy novel? It's not written by
All
Tom
was
Clancy
good.
either way. It's just a brand. Same
Yeah.
with James Patterson, right? Like James Patterson writes the outline and then he hires some ghost writer to fill in the outline. And then that gets published as
Yep.
James Patterson's novel. And I know James Patterson does this because he actually says he does it in the James Patterson masterclass that you can take online, which I took.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So like he's very open about it. So like if James Patterson now is using AI to write his book from his outline instead of hiring a ghostwriter, is it any different than what happened yesterday? Not really. If we have a robot running our factory versus a Chinese guy running our factory, I don't know. It's I kind of think if we wanted to have the big fight about treating a man's labor as something of artistic and humanistic value, like we lost that debate 200 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a shame, but it happened.
Yeah.
I'm going to seem unsympathetic because I know artists and I feel bad for them, but as much as I can, I don't want to hurt them. But at the same time, there's certain things that are like Thanos inevitable, right? I mean, it's going to happen, right? I think Greg made it very. Yep. Go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, the tragedy of capitalism, right, is that it treats a man's labor as a commodity.
Yes.
When in fact, to most of us, or to many of us, let's say, our labor is something more than that, right? Like, I don't think of ACKS as a commodity. I'm not doing it as a 9 to 5, right?
Yeah.
But capitalism turns a man's labor into a commodity, and commodities end up going to the low price bidder. It just is what it is. That is literally, it is what, if you want to criticize capitalism, that's how you criticize it, because it does that to labor.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now AI is going to do that it's going to do to knowledge labor what the Industrial Revolution did to blue collar labor. And I mean, I can see the writing on the wall for my job for sure.
Yeah, I know. Eventually, if I could eke out a little bit extra a month with stuff I write, eventually that's going to help me to survive retirement, so I don't have to work forever. I'm good. You know what I mean? Just a little bit more beyond pension and Social Security, a little bit more, right?
Yep.
But I think Greg has the most prescient take on all things here. Rob AI is going to rule us all. You have been warned. He's talking about, of course, about Rob Connolly, because Rob Connolly and I and about 10 other people are in a chat group, a bunch of old school bloggers and this and that, Eric and his, Tim Shorts and everything. And Rob and Matt Jackson have epic arguments in this chat, especially about politics and every other thing about life. And Greg has been threatening to absorb all of these things and feed all of these arguments into Chat GPT to create this hybrid of Rob AI eventually. And so this has been a long-standing joke. And I think Greg is only half kidding. That's the scary part. So Rob Connolly may eventually rule the world, and we should all be very, very fearful, because I've played in his games. It's not a pleasant place.
Not a pleasant world. Yeah.
Not a pleasant place. Yeah. So Rob AI
I've read Rob's books on world building. So at least when Rob AI takes over, like the digital dystopia will make sense and will have coherent verisimilitude.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I am pulling a Rob reach around here because that's what we've dubbed it in all our Friday night games. Because Rob is always reaching around to pull something off the fucking shelf, and I'm pulling off his book, How to Make a Fantasy Sandbox by Rob Connolly, which edited by Joe the Lawyer. Look at that. Hey, look at that.
You guys did a bang up job on that. That's actually one of my favorite. That's one of my favorite OSR books. And and
I'll take all the credit. Rob just did the basics. I take all the credit for that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the editor is really the guy who makes the train run on time.
That's what happened to Star Wars. His wife edited it and saved the fucking movie. So that's why I look at it. Same thing. I am George Lucas's wife. That's it. You know.
There you go.
That's
there
it.
You go.
That's it. But yeah, it's a good book.
That's actually really creepy, given that people said I sounded like George Lucas earlier. Because now I feel like we're in a relationship.
Hey, honey. Well,
this just got really awkward.
Neither of us. No, the audience can't see where our hands are right now. So let them wonder. You know, let them wonder. But there are 3 books that I've read, D&D related books, that I thought helped me become a better DM. And yours is one of them, right? Rob's is one of them. Oop, there you go, Rob. Sorry. And Sly Flourish, Return to Lazy Dungeon Master. Those 3 books I spoke there on the shelf. Those 3 books I will, and when I do write my DM guide, I'm going to say, see Appendix A for the 3 books you should read to extrapolate, get more knowledge about these things, and those 3 books will be in there because they're great. I can, and I'm not making any money off of this thing. I'm pimping it here, guys. I volunteered to do it. I have no skill at editing. I just volunteered because Tim noticed that I could find things that don't make sense. Tim Shorts, and I edited some of his stuff. I'll read something like that doesn't seem right. I don't know any of the rules of grammar, but I can tell you it doesn't read right, and you should write it like this. So again, that's not a theory guy, more of a hands-on guy. But yeah, it's a good book, and you can't go wrong by picking those 3 books up, guys. Honest to God. Links for, by the way, all of your books, Alex, are, as I said before, in my description and then your description too. So you can pick up
there we go.
all of your books. Arbiter of Worlds, there's a link to that on Amazon. There's a link to all your books on Drive-Thru. All right, so you can pick all that stuff up. And George Lucas' wife has not aged well based on what I see now on the screen. Hey, I got a far better ass than George Lucas's wife. It's nice and firm. I do a lot of squats, so she got nothing on me. All right. All right. Couple quick questions. I'll get into sort of my superlatives of your favorite this, your favorite that, and if we do a next one. But 2 things I wanted to add, maybe 3 things. Before we get into your products and all that, we could go over that and sort of end with that. So, what is the most underrated RPG product of all time in any genre, whatever? What do you think?
Wow, that's a really good one. The most underrated. Okay, so I am gonna say it is Megs by Greg Gordon. So the Mayfair Exponential Gaming System by Greg Gordon.
Really? So Mayfair had a system? I thought they just had modules. I didn't. Mayfair Games, the one with Lich Lords and all that. That's
Mayfair Games. So they did the first edition of DC Heroes. It was by Greg Gordon, and it was an exponential system. And it's an absolute work of mathematical genius. Just a really brilliant game design. Yeah.
So it appeals to you because of the math of it and your system's approach to things. I see. Okay. All right. You were
absolutely brilliant system. Yeah.
You're the Rollmaster guy then too? MERPs. You liked all that stuff, the whole.
Yeah, I liked MERPs. I just thought MERPs was mechanically a bad fit for Middle Earth, but like.
Yeah, I agree with that.
But
the critical table alone.
Oh, yeah, God. if you just wanted to do like an RPG set in the time of the Black Death where everyone dies, then like MERP was pretty good.
Yeah, exactly. I remember finding a loophole because me being a rules lawyer, that's probably why I went to law school. That they said for every mile you walk, you gain X amount of XP, and eventually you'll. I'm like, I'm gonna walk around the fucking Shire for 9 years and come out of that a goddamn 30-level wizard.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Their shit didn't make sense, but I get it, right? They had to do what they had to do.
Yeah.
God. All right. So on the opposite of that, what's the most overrated RPG product? This caused a lot of controversy because as I'm doing these, Alex, it's a fair warning. It's the gift that keeps on giving. I get a 2-hour interview here, a 4-hour interview, and then I break out 10 or 15-minute clips and put that out there too, because a lot of people want to listen to a long thing, but they'll listen to a clip. So I put out Joe Block, the Greyhawk Grognard. His most overrated product of all time was 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons, which caused a huge, as you can imagine, stink. So what do you think it is?
Gosh, I almost don't want to answer because I tend to not be one who wants to bash on other people who are in the same profession as me, right? I consider myself a professional game designer, so I don't want to bash on other professional game designers.
Well, that being said,
but you've put me on the spot, so I guess
If
I
you don't
will
want to
answer.
answer, that's okay. I don't want to. I want to fuck you up here.
I will answer Shadowrun.
Shadow who?
And Shadowrun. Shadowrun.
Okay. All right.
So
Okay.
the reason I say I think Shadowrun is an exceptionally brilliant world and
Okay.
fictional universe with a badly designed rule set attached to it.
Yeah.
And the reason I'm going to single out Shadowrun is that Shadowrun was literally the game that proved to me that if you don't have functioning economics, your game will simply not make sense. And it was because my players realized that the wage rate for Shadowrunning provided in all of the Shadowrunning official adventures, the Shadowrunning rulebook, was less than the wage that they could earn simply by stealing the cars parked on the street
Became
of the
Grand Theft
Shadowrun.
Auto, huh?
And it we were high schoolers, and it took us like an hour to figure that out.
Yeah.
And then you're like, well, why would I go risk death for Mr. Johnson and go fight in this mutant Aztec pyramid against dragons and orc street samurai when I can get 20,000 credits just stealing a car? Like it made no sense whatsoever. And you know, the more I dug into Shadowrun, the more just didn't make sense. So I'm gonna single out Shadowrun as my exemplar of an overrated game. But it's a wonderful world, but it's an overrated game.
Both for the mechanics. It just based on how we started this show, that makes total sense based on how you think. Yeah. What do you think about Shadow Dark? I thought that at first I thought you said Shadow Dark. That's why I like what? What do you think of Shadow Dark?
I don't really think about it.
Really? You played it, looked at it, checked it out, bought it, nothing?
I mean, I read it. It wasn't for me. I moved on with my life. I mean, I know it's very popular. Some folks in my community really like it. I read it, didn't particularly find it interesting. I imagine a lot of people who read Shadow Dark would probably not find ACKS interesting.
I absolutely think you're right there. You know, I've been this theory in my head is churning around here for a while, and maybe you're better at the theory than me. Maybe you could help me bring this out, but there's a definite connection, I believe, between big, thick fucking rule books and people who like to run long campaigns. I don't mean like high level, because in 5e you get the 20th level in 5 sessions, right? I mean 5-year campaigns, not 5-month campaigns, right?
That's right.
I know that there is. I've always seen it, that there's this connection between the intricacy and the complexity of the rule system and length of campaign and what it lends itself to versus something like Shadow Dark or Old School Essentials, which people say, hey, I ran a long campaign. It lasted a year. To me, that's like an introductory. That gets you to level 3, right? Yeah. You know what I mean? And they'll run the whole thing. So why though? Can you tell me why? Can you tell me why I'm right? Because I don't understand it, but I have this feeling.
Oh, well, I mean, partly it goes back to what we mentioned earlier about rules light games become rules heavy if they're run long enough. Yeah. And so when you've got a slender rule book that's very rules light, it simply doesn't have enough there to address all of the complexities that are going to come up in a long campaign. I think also, you know, there's a human craving for novelty and as well as for advancement, right? And so in order to have advancement, you can have really 2 types of advancement. You can have either vertical advancement, where you get better at what you're doing, or you can have horizontal advancement, where you become able to do new things. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, even a rules light game can have vertical advancement. The extent of vertical advancement is limited only by the math, right? So, you know,
+2 to hit, +3 to hit.
Plus 3 to hit, right? But the problem is, if you only have vertical advancement without horizontal breadth, then the effect is that of being on a treadmill, because you vertically advance. Now you're +4 to hit, but now the monsters have AC 4 because they're ogres and not orcs.
Exactly.
Now you've got +6 to hit, but now you're fighting demons and they have 6 AC, etc. And so, so the advancement proves to be illusory, and this is where the term "the treadmill" comes from, that MMO players talk about a lot. I'm grinding on the leveling treadmill. Okay, it's because you just advance. And so what MMO game designers realized was that you have to have the linear to make that dopamine hit, that I'm advancing. Yes. But you have to have the horizontal breadth, so that as you advance, it unlocks different states of play to create that novelty and to give you the sense that not only are you more powerful, but you can feel it because you're doing new things and not just
more
the same
things, different things, new things. Yeah.
And
that makes total sense.
And then complexity of a game, even a simple game, ACKS is a simple game, but it becomes complicated because it can do so many different things. It has so many different
Yes.
modules, so many different tracks of advancement. Whereas a
Yes.
rules light game can only ever really have a very small number of things that it can
Yeah.
do. And so, if you're going to play in a long campaign, it needs to have both vertical and horizontal advancement. Having horizontal advancement necessarily means it's going to be more complex. And then as you play it more, it's going to create more rulings, which is necessarily going to generate more rules. And so when you add all that together, if you want long campaigns, ultimately you're going to have more complex games. And by the way,
Yeah.
this is also why I think Traveller has never been as commercially successful as I wish it had been, because there's a lot of brilliance in Traveller, because Traveller kills itself by never really offering that vertical advancement. It has horizontal advancement. You get different types of spaceships. You have
Yeah.
crews of mercenaries, where there's beautiful horizontal scope with lots and lots of modules and things you can do. But you never really have that vertical. And it's very unusual for being one of the only games that doesn't have any vertical advancement. It only has horizontal advancement.
My approach I'm taking as I write this up, because I got all the classes and their abilities and this and that already done for a while now. The approach I'm taking is more of an AD&D-ish approach, in the sense that you start at first level with most everything you're ever going to get, and you're going to get better. But the shit you start with, you get a lot of stuff at first level, right? You're not going to get this ability at 5th and this at 10th and this at 15th and this at 20th. You're going to get it all now. You're just going to get better at it. It's like a skill-based system that you're going to go up in. And you could put more points to various things depending on what you want to get better at, right?
Right.
I don't know where that fits in your model, because it's the breadth is there at the beginning, and there's progression in each of all those things as you get better. That's sort of it's a hybrid, I guess. Then it's somewhere in the middle of all that.
Yeah, I would say that's in the middle. It's going to depend whether or not, if you let people customize how they advance, then what you're going to get is people are going to make choices about which horizontal branch they ascend. And so that's going to work really, really well. I think it would work less well if you advance simultaneously in every horizontal branch, because then people are like, I'm just on multiple treadmills. Whereas if you can kind of choose where you advance, then let's say I focus on sword fighting and Bob focuses on wilderness exploration, then it's going to feel like I've actually gained relative to Bob, right? So there's that sense of mutual advancement for both of us.
Yeah, that makes sense. It makes me rethink. I should have maybe something you get a 5th, a choice at 5th, a choice at 10th, a choice at 15th.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Choices are good. Yeah,
choice. Exactly. I don't want to get into the whole. I want to build out my character before I even roll the dice into something I want to be at 20th level. That's what I want to avoid. My thought was, give them everything at first level, some of which you never get better at. You just have this ability, period. It stays. And some of it is more like the 2nd edition thief skill system, a rogue, where you can put 5 points into here and 10 points into there when you level, right?
Which was a really good system, I thought.
Yes,
I think the second edition thief system was one of the best innovations in second edition.
Really absolutely agree. My only complaint about it was that you sucked for the first 5 levels. I give people maybe 70 more percentages to spread out at first level, just to make yourself not suck ass. Because a fighter's going to miss 50% of the time, a thief's going to fail 80% of the time at first. That just doesn't seem right. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So so that's kind of where I came down on that thing. All right, so let's jump into, I think I have pulled up here. Let me save this. Let me close some screens out, because whenever I do a shared screen, it slows things down a little bit. I have pulled up here a couple things for us to look at. Let me get rid of the chat overlay for us. And wrong button, Joe. Share the screen, share this screen, and boom. There you go. All right, so we have disappeared. But we're looking at here, Alex. This is starting with your recent Kickstarter, right? The most recent one, ACKS II, Imperial Imprint, 1,972 backers. All right, you still there, man? By the way,
yeah, I'm here. Yep.
All right, cool. Let me add us in there. Oh, that's too big. Here, let me add us in the bottom there. That's even better. Okay. All right. So this is the most recent Kickstarter that you did, and you did very well with this. You can see my pledge here. I'm waiting on the shipment. $333,000, half of the evil number, 666. Well done, avoiding Satan come and kill you.
No. It was okay. So you notice my goal was 50,000. So I actually was. I was 666% funded, and we closed on Thanksgiving Day while I was at Thanksgiving dinner with my wife's very religious Christian charismatic family.
Oh
And
boy.
so the game closes, and I'm like, I've got it up on my phone to see how well I did. And they're like, "How well did you do?" And I'm like, "I'm 600 and yeah, we did really well, everybody. Thanks so much." Awkward.
Perfect. Religious. You're Greek Orthodox, I think you said, right?
I am, yeah.
Yeah. Is she the same, or she's differently religious?
She's not Greek Orthodox.
Her family are.
Yeah, she was raised, I think Southern Baptist, and now she's just kind of non-denominational Christian.
So you had to go into a Southern Baptist family's Thanksgiving dinner and talk about evil D&D stuff, just like the Satanic Panic all over again, right?
Yeah, I mean, they're quite chill, all things considered. It was mostly in my head. I thought it was very funny.
So this was a great success, and it's fulfilling now. We're going to get it soon. I know that I think the last guys were like me, waiting for that slipcase to come, and then we got all our books. So I'm looking forward to that. I see some are out there in the wilds already, people doing unboxings, which I'm going to do, guys, once I get it. So looking forward to that. And then I want to show your webpage here as well. So Autarch.co. All right. So you pick everything up off the webpage. I think you did something recently. You announced that it was something about PDFs. You could get a PDF here or on drive-through. Is that how it goes?
You can now, if you go to Autarch, if you go to our storefront, which is linked somewhere on there, it's autarchemporium.com. It's my Shopify store. So Drive-Through RPG put in this new program, and let's see. I think if you go to shop, you'll see it.
Okay.
So Autarch Emporium, there it is. So they put this new module in place where now you can purchase books on Shopify stores, and you'll get your PDFs with them. So that was pretty cool.
That's very cool. Very cool. So Shopify is your base. I'll talk about this the next time if we talk next time, but that's your base then for your storefront. Okay.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
My storefront. Yeah.
That makes sense. All right. So everything here, guys, as you saw before, let me drop back here. This is all the millions of ways to connect with Alex. You got YouTube, Substack, Discord, Twitter, Facebook, Wiki, forums, Jesus, everything. You got a little everything here. So, and again, many links are in my description on both my page and Alex's page, but this is probably where most people are looking to get your stuff, right? So I figured it'd be good to maybe go over give us an overview, Alex. Tell me, do you want to share your screen and point things out, or do you want to just tell me to move my mouse? Whatever you want to do, whatever's easier for you.
Oh yeah, what you got is fine.
All right. Okay.
Yeah, I would say most people find us on Drive-Through RPG. We have an Autarch page. Autarch has two product lines, which is Adventurer Conqueror King System and Ascendant. Adventurer Conqueror King System, we've just finished, ACKS II. The PDFs are now available on Drive-Through RPG.
Yep.
We're still selling, of course, all of the first edition of ACKS stuff as well. Most of it is compatible, but if you have ACKS II, you no longer would need to purchase like the first edition core rules or things like that. Like you should go ahead and upgrade to the Imperial Imprint line of products.
But any modules or any adventures that are out there, they're totally cross-compatible, right? So you buy an older module for ACKS I and you run on an ACKS II.
Yeah, I would say the vast majority of people are using actually those older modules right now with ACKS II without much issue. The biggest change is I took ACKS II off of the open game license because I was pissed. I was pissed at the shenanigans of Wizards of the Coast and their perfidious. I just took it off. I just rewrote it. So as a result, I had to rename a bunch of magic items and rename a bunch of spells and rename a bunch of monsters. So there's an element where you're sometimes be like, what is Wizard Lock now called? And so you have to stuff like that. Like, or like clerics are now called Crusaders. But hopefully if you see a character who has a spell called Cure Light Injury and he's a Crusader, you can figure out that this is the equivalent of a cleric who had Cure Light Wounds. So like that's there's that kind of conversion is required. Okay.
Why not Creative Commons? I know a little slight diversion, but why not Creative Commons? Why not just because fuck them? That's why kind of thing.
Yes, because fuck them, that's why. Yeah, yeah, exactly. And also, when I put ACKS out I put it completely out on open game license, and I did it with the mentality that we talked about earlier, that old school mentality where, you kind of expect and you want that some people are going to take a little bit of stuff here, a little bit of stuff there, and they'll make some new products and it's all good and everybody remixes. But like, I have a lot of people that hate me. And so, some folks literally took everything I wrote and just put it up on lulu.com and
Jesus.
were selling their own versions of my product for less than I was charging. And I had folks coming into my community thinking they had supported me, and actually they had like been buying books from people who hated me and were doing it just to screw me over.
Jesus
And
Christ.
kind of bummed me out. And
Yeah.
so I am going to put a license out for ACKS II, like a compatibility license that people will use, and it's going to be a zero royalty license, and you'll
Yeah.
be able to use the content for remix, but it's going to be a different type of license so that I just at a certain point, like, if you have enough people that hate you and can screw you over like that, it kind of becomes a bad fit to do that. It
Yep.
just
Yep.
sucks.
Yep. No,
So
that makes sense. Yeah. Yeah. I get that. I get that totally, man. So you have Domains at War.
yeah.
Now I have the compilation book. What is that? Because this I think is very interesting and very good. You want to sort of
Oh,
explain
sure.
that?
Yeah. So as I mentioned earlier,
Yeah.
when I created ACKS, I wanted the culmination to be that your player character could go on to become a general or a
Yeah.
hero on a battlefield. And I didn't want it to be like an abstract hand wavy battlefield. I wanted it to be like,
Yeah.
no, we're going to have a 6 foot by 6 foot table with terrain and miniatures, and we're going to actually have a huge miniature war game like Warhammer or Debellus
Hmm.
Antiquitatis or any of these other tabletop war games that people play. And so Domains at War is the tabletop war game that goes with ACKS. So it's the equivalent of Chainmail for Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, or Battle
Okay.
System for
Yep.
second edition Advanced Dungeons and
Yep.
Dragons.
Yep.
And it's a multi-tier mass combat system. And so you can play at the
Okay.
platoon scale all the way up to the brigade scale. And at the brigade scale, you can do huge battles like the Battle of Zama or the Battle of the Hadapses or the Battle of Gaugamela with 100,000 troops on a side.
Hmm.
So
Okay. Very cool. Very cool. Then we see Dwemer Mount. And I might as well do this now in public. I apologize formally, Alex, for the entire 2,000 copper pieces disaster, because back in the ancient blog days, Eric Tankar ran us through Dwemer Mount famously, and
oh
it
man.
was a disastrous experience because all he had was James Mal's basic notes, which is all you had at the time, right? He hadn't
Yeah.
given you anything other than basic scratch paper notes or whatever. And we said, Eric, run it as written, so we get a true experience of Dwemer Mount, because it was all the rage, right? The first new mega dungeon in ages, right? And so it went horribly bad. And the next morning, I got up hungover as fuck around 10:30. My dog was busting my balls and wanted to go out. And I'm like, God damn it. And I look and I'm like, well, somebody was talking about the experience. And I said, well, I'd do my quick write up on Dwemer Mount. And the whole controversy was about, why did the fucking rats have 2,000 copper pieces? Exactly. No more, no less. Stacked them neatly in the fucking corner. Why?
Yep.
And Greg's character, Greg Christopher, suicided himself just out of fucking Lenta's end. It was just the most horrendous. But it was my first
Oh
experience of
man.
going viral, because everybody wanted to know, and I had more cred back then than I do now. You know what I mean? So it was a thing where people knew there was 300 of us, right?
Yeah.
James Raji was saying shit like, we can't just be more than 300 people selling shit to each other. There's got to
Yeah.
be more to the OSR than this, right? There was like a couple hundred of us, but anyway, it went nuts, and the 2,000 copper piece became a meme. Dwemer Mount went nuts. James Mal went into hiding for a while. Tavis
Yep.
Allison, who was working with you, had to fly up to fucking Canada, say, where the fuck's what's going on? The
Yep.
whole bit.
Yep.
Me and Eric soon after that met up with Tavis in a bar in New York City, because Tavis was living in New York at the time. And he's like, dude, I'm sorry, man. I didn't know it would be that. And eventually it got better. And I remember putting a post on an RPG site, the first time I ever interacted with you in a meaningful way. And I said, this is what it should have been in the first place. This is good. It's a great product. And I still think it is much, much better product than it was at the time that we played it. And in thanks, I asked Tavis, can you include my Flail Snails guy, Sir the Fist of Uther, somewhere in there? He goes, oh, I love that. Yeah. So it was graffiti in the 2,000 copper pieces giant or little rat room. It says, Sir the Fist of Uther was here.
Yep.
In graffiti in that room. So my mark is on there. And so anyway, Dwemer Mount, I had to apologize because I can't. It's the elephant in the room here. So I do apologize for that.
No
that
apology
shit show
needed.
of 15 years ago, wherever the hell it was. So
that was a tough project.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, I mean, because James took everything really hard, and essentially, I never really got the full story, but from what I can tell, he had both some personal and some health problems hit him all at once, and then the stress of writing the book. And this was early days of Kickstarter, so we didn't realize at the time, like, nowadays best practices, you write the product before you kickstart it. At the
Yes. Yes.
time, we were like, "Yay, Kickstarter!" And so,
Yep.
we just kind of did the Kickstarter, and then he was gonna write it, and that went badly.
Yeah.
And the whole thing was such a difficult project. It basically drove Tavis, I think, out of the OSR space. Like after
He did.
Dwimmermart,
He did. He was done.
he was done. He was
Yeah.
done. He sold me his shares of Autarch and got out. I don't even
Really?
I don't even know if he still plays
He
OSR
lives
games.
somewhere out west. Arizona comes to mind, somewhere like that. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? That's the last I heard. We used to
Yeah.
hang out. I was playing in his New York City game for a while. I would every time I could get down there, I'd take the train
Yeah.
in and hop with his group. We went to some cafe
Yep.
or bars or wherever the hell we played. It was fun.
Yep.
But yeah, he's gone. He's done.
He's
So
done.
yeah.
He was just done.
Yeah.
And it ended up, we ended up, Autarch lost about $20,000 all in on the project, even though it was our
Jesus.
biggest Kickstarter to date.
Yeah.
And so, put me behind like 18 months on Domains at War. It took a long time to kind of unshovel from that debacle.
Yeah.
So,
No, that makes sense.
lesson
Makes
lesson
sense.
learned: always finish the book before you do the Kickstarter.
Yeah. Yeah.
At
And we'll
least,
get into that
at least the first draft. Yeah.
Yep. And if we do the other episode, did you want to do it? We'll get into that, the business practices, the creative practices, things you've learned and lessons learned, so everybody can sort of learn this stuff. But moving on from my apology thing there, you have some zines here, right?
Oh yeah,
Axioms.
Axioms. Yeah. So that's I do a Patreon,
Yep.
and I try and do an article or two every month on the Patreon, and then I bundle them up periodically. I used to do them every quarter, but ACKS II ended up taking so much time that I
Yeah.
didn't have time to continue the quarterly Axioms. But there's a whole bunch of issues of Axioms, and then I bundled them up into some Axioms compendiums you can pick
All
up.
right. There you go. 1 through 8.
Up.
Yeah. Pick up some compendiums there.
Yep.
Good.
Yeah. And so the inspiration there was just the old Dragon magazine, really. So
okay. All right. Always good. Always good to steal from fucking Wizards of the Coast, because the hell with them, right? So we got Guns of War and the Oran Empire Primer. Or is it Primer? I don't know. Primer. What?
I have no idea how that actually works.
Motto. Yeah. But what was Guns of War?
Yeah, so Guns of War was a stretch goal for Domains at War. So people were like, when I was working on Domains at War, they said, "Hey, are you going to have cannon and gunpowder?" And I said, "No, but maybe I'll do it as a stretch goal." And we hit the stretch goal. So that was Guns of War, and that was actually done in partnership with James Rogge. So So the gun rules in Guns of War were compatible with the gun rules from Lamentations of the Flame.
Lamentations, nice. Yeah. He's going to be a guest, by the way, guys. I don't think
Oh, nice.
Yeah, he's going to. We have a date. Shit, and it's somewhere in my phone. I gotta look it up, but I'll advertise it later. So he's coming though. He's coming.
Yeah.
All right. So all right.
And then the Oran Empire Primer is like the default campaign setting for ACKS II. But the Primer is actually, most of the Primer is now in the revised rulebook as an appendix, so you don't need to separately purchase it.
Gotcha. Okay, that's cool. You did what Jeff Delaney did with Hyperborea. Dropped that in the back, kind of a thing. Yeah, that
exactly.
Makes sense.
Yeah, just like he did. He was really smart to do that, because he had this really cool setting, and he kind of really leaned into it. And I think it made his rulebook pop because he did that.
I agree. It definitely stands out. I mean, he leans way into the swords and sorcery vibe. No elves and dwarves. He's just old school. Yeah, all that stuff. Yep. Yeah, that's good. I can't pronounce that, but something almanac of unusual magic.
Yeah, Arixa Meraki's Almanac of Unusual Magic. Yeah, so that was a freelancer named Matt Jarmack had this idea for doing a book that would just kind of push the limits of the ACKS content creation rules. So ACKS has a whole series of sub-mechanics that allows you to create your own types of magic, create your own spells, create your own character classes. And so he thought, what if I was to use the rules for creating my own magic type and my own classes and really push them into bonkers directions? So like one of the character classes is basically a Star Trek engineer who's crashed in a fantasy world. And so his magic is actually like Star Trek pseudoscience.
Nice.
Another one of the
Scotty, of course, right? The Scotty class.
Yeah, exactly. It's the Scotty class. Yeah. So it's like stuff like that. So So it was just kind of like a fun supplement to see how crazy we could go. And it's one of the only ACKS books that's pretty gonzo.
Okay. All right. Yeah. All right. Cool. And we have more axioms here. Compendium. Wow, we got a lot of axioms, man.
Yeah. 22 issues, I think.
Okay. All right. Cool. And then we got Ascendant. We haven't seen the Ascendant book yet, but we're seeing the Ascendant module, it looks like, right?
Yeah. So Ascendant is a superhero game. It uses logarithmic math. It's really elegant in its mathematics. I'm really proud of how it came together. And and it is set in, it was just down. If you scroll down, it was there.
Okay, did I miss it? Yeah, do we
A
remember?
little bit down, a little bit down. One more row. There it is.
There we go. Okay.
It's set in our modern world. Superheroes have just begun to emerge, and so the government has created the Star Spangled Squadron, which is like the government sponsored superhero team. It's got its own comic book line that goes with it, and it's got its own.
Really? You have comics?
Yeah, you have a graphic novel series called Star Spangled Squadron. You can see the first one is up there on the page to the right. You just scrolled past it. Go down. It was right there.
There you go.
On the right
All right,
side.
very cool, man. I didn't know you had comics. That's awesome. So
Yeah.
I figured that was a module.
No, it's a graphic novel. Yeah. So so a lot of people compare it to The Boys, but it's actually kind of the opposite of The Boys. The Boys was a deconstruction of comics, and it's really intended as like a reconstruction of comics.
Okay.
So it's actually got, like the hero American Eagle is, he's a super strong, fast flying, invulnerable hero. So he's very similar to Superman.
Yeah.
Like the plot twist is that there's no plot twist. He's actually just like a good dude who loves America and tries to do the right thing. And so people like read the comic book and they keep waiting. Like they're like, yeah, but he turns evil.
Yeah.
No.
Where's the red kryptonite? Yeah.
No, it's like he's just a dude. He loves his wife and he loves his country and he like tries to do the right thing.
Very cool.
Very
cool. And we got a lot of modules here, it looks like, too.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So do you remember during Player's Companion? I have this in PDF, but I never bought the actual. Does this Player's Companion been introduced or incorporated into ACKS II?
It's incorporated into ACKS II.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So you're getting ACKS II, you're getting that plus a few other things. Okay.
Yep.
There's ACKS I. A lot of modules here. Now, is Secrets of the Nether City your mega dungeon? That makes sense.
It is. I call it a kilo dungeon because it's not quite as big as some of the mega dungeons. So I call it a kilo dungeon.
Yeah.
But it's the closest equivalent to a mega dungeon in the Arn Empire setting.
Okay.
And it goes back to what you were talking about. Remember, we were saying earlier, we were chatting about how mega dungeons, they kind of lost their thrill for you because they didn't have verisimilitude.
None.
So the objective I gave to myself when I created Secrets of the Nether City was I wanted a mega dungeon with verisimilitude.
Yes.
What would actually justify it? And so I came up with this notion that to get to the mega dungeon is actually beneath the sewers under like in a Pompeii like volcanic explosion has covered it up, and then the sewers are built through the Pompeii remains, and then the mega dungeon is beneath that. And so to get through it, you literally have to go through a cesspool, and it's really gross, and there's like bugs and shit. And my thought was, this is why no one has explored the mega dungeon, is because it's so disgusting to get there. And it's actually very funny because multiple game masters have messaged me privately to say that their players didn't explore the Nether City because it was too disgusting, and they were like, "Oh, too gross out. I don't want to go there." And I'm like, "Oops, I made it just too realistic, right?" Like,
yeah. That's funny. I have a group. I dropped locations in my campaign they could go if they want, and I was like, you know what? I'll drop Rapparathic up here. And none of them wanted to go because it's fucking Rapparathic, and it's like a death trap, right? It's like dropping Tomb of Horrors on steroids into your campaign. Nobody wants to go unless they want it. That's how they ended the campaign. It's like, we got 2 sessions left. What do you guys want to do? Rapparathic. I'm like, all right, just let's do it. Yeah, same thing. Some things you want to avoid as a player, right?
Yeah.
All right.
Cool. I don't think Nether City is as bad as Rapparathic in terms of being straight up deadly, but it definitely is designed to be unpleasant to get to. That's like the in-game explanation for why it hasn't been discovered, right?
All right.
And so like my group took to calling it Nether Shitty.
Your group sounds like my group. That's perfect, dude.
I'm like, thanks, guys. You're really helping me market this product. Really,
that's awesome.
Really appreciate the support.
When we're done here, I'm going to purchase that. That's the next thing I'm going to buy. That's the next thing.
There you go. You'll see as soon as you read it, you'll be like, "Yep, I get it."
All right, that's cool, man. And we have layers and encounters, which I have here. I'm holding it up, but nobody can see it. But I have layers and encounters here. What is that?
So that book, a lot of people tell me that that's the best book I've ever written.
Really?
So Layers and Encounters is I took every monster in ACKS and I made a layer for it.
Okay.
And so you're like, you run into a bunch of bandits and you're like, what the heck? You open up Layers and Encounters. Here's a bandit layer. It's got all the treasure, all the NPCs. Here's a map. This is their motivation. This is their equipment. You're good to go.
Very cool, man.
And I did it for everything. So even like stupid stuff where you're like, how do you possibly make an encounter with, a bear interesting?
Yeah.
here's our bear lair, and like it's a cool little bear lair, and you can run it, and it becomes this huge time saver for the judge who's doing wilderness expeditions and has to deal with random encounters, and you're like, I don't know what to do. They just ran into brigands, and it's 150 brigands. And I didn't have it statted up. Layers and encounters.
All right. Very cool. Very cool. Are you going to add? There's the one thing that happened back in the day when we were all doing these things, right? People were writing these books and coming out with stuff, and you wrote the map for the DM, but there's no VTT aspect of it, right? Is that something you might want to revise at some point?
Absolutely.
VTT version, or
yeah. Okay. I think that's a big thing, and I didn't play VTT at the time, so it didn't occur to me. But definitely since COVID, VTT has really taken off. So, so for ACKS II, we're building out a whole virtual tabletop system.
Good.
It's on Foundry. I'm using it with the Grey Brotherhood, and I'm definitely hoping to add VTT support for the future product.
Very cool. Very cool. And we talked about the Heroic Fantasy Handbook. Barbarian Conquerors of Kanu sounds so goddamn Conan. What is that, man?
Yeah, so that is it's kind of a companion book to the Heroic Fantasy Handbook. It was kickstarted at the same time. It's by my friend Omer Joel, who runs Stella Gamma Games. He's primarily known for his work in the Cepheus system, which is a science fiction traveler system. But he's also a big fan of ACKS, and so he approached me. It was like, I know you're working on Heroic Fantasy. I have this idea for this kind of gonzo barbarian fantasy world that's ruled by lizard men, and it's got time travelers from like the Star Trek Federation and Nephilim, and it's got the Greys in UFOs, and it's got ancient Stygian sorcerers and
you had me at Nephilim, dude. You had me at Nephilim. I
love that shit. And I'm like, I was just like, this is fantastic.
Oh yeah.
And so he built it out. So it's got tons of new character classes. You can be like a half Nephilim. You can be an incarnate dragon. You can be a lizard man shaman, a gecko man. You can be like a cockroach thief, like crazy stuff. It's really good.
Adding both to my cart as soon as we're done here. Excellent. And then we have a ruined city. Is that a city? What is this? Ruined City of
Ruined City of Sifendir is a mid-level module. So in the Arn Empire setting, Sifendir was the capital of the Elven Empire of Southern Argolay.
Okay.
And while the elves were at war with the humans, the capital gets attacked and destroyed by a dragon.
Okay.
And so the dragon has ever since kind of ruled the city. The elves have been butthurt about it. And Ruined City of Sifendir is your opportunity to go explore the ruined city and kill the dragon.
Okay. All right. Cool. And we got a little comment here. I wasn't paying attention much to the comments because you guys are posting a million miles a minute, but this was well said, I think. There you go. 600% heaven and hell had their eyes on the game. Well said. That's perfect.
Yep.
All right. Then we have more Ascendant stuff, a couple more modules. Capital of the Borderlands. Is that a setting book, a cities?
Yeah.
Setting?
So Capital of the Borderlands is the companion to Secrets of the Nether City. So Secrets of the Nether City, as I said, is beneath the sewers. Capital of the Borderlands is the city above the sewers.
Oh, okay.
So it's got a sandbox. It's got a sandbox region that you can play in.
Yeah.
With about 30 different points of interest. And then it's got the fully statted city with multiple factions, different. It's got, a Tower of Knowledge. It's got 2 different thieves guilds. It's got an arena with gladiatorial battles and multiple Lanista houses. It's got noble houses that are competing to control the municipal council. It's got, all sorts of really, really fun stuff.
All right.
Random encounters for every different district of the city. It's kind of like my attempt to say this is what a city source book should be like. I actually think that's one of the better books we've published. I'm a big fan of that one.
Okay, so it sounds like Ruined City, Secrets of the Nether City, and Capital of the Borderlands and Barbarians, of course. I got 4 products. Guys, super chats are appreciated because he's just cost me like $50. All right, so he needs reviews. So feel free to send in money to both me and Alex. It helps. All right. We got more Ascendant stuff, right? The Star Spangled Squadron. Say that 3 times fast. Buy this axe. What is that? The Encyclopedia of Dwarven Civilization. What's that about, man?
Oh, yeah. So there was this whole meme on the ACKS Discord community of like an elf versus dwarf war. And the dwarves were constantly demanding, they need more dwarf character classes and rules for dwarven mushroom farming. And I myself have never really played dwarves very much. I've always been more like an elf or a human player. And I was like, you know what? fine, I'm going to write a dwarf book.
Motherfucker, here we go.
And it was like a huge success. It was a really successful Kickstarter.
Yep.
And so I ended up making like this entire encyclopedia about dwarven culture, explaining why dwarves are the way they are. And so about half the book is written in character from a point of view of a human sage who's studying dwarves. And
All
so
right.
it's kind of written like a Victorian field guide studying Aborigines or something.
All right.
And then the other half of the book is game mechanics for playing an all-dwarf campaign.
Now that you showed favoritism to the dwarves, have the elves demanded their own book?
So they have, and so now this year I'll be kickstarting that, and that's going to be my next Kickstarter. It's called Before All Others, the Handbook of Elven Civilization.
Nice.
So,
All right. And then we have the new books, as promised. The ACKS II books are here. And the Judge's Screen inserts. I just got them today because for some reason I never got the damn email. So you sent me the email. I was able to download them off of DriveThru.
Awesome.
And I got them today. So thank you very much for that. A little tech support in our planning stages here of hey, where are my links anyway? So I wanted to review this stuff before we did it. So yeah, the revised rule book, the Judge's Journal, the Judge's Journal, obviously the DM guide, Player's Handbook, and the Monster Manual, right? So all right. And they are thick books, guys. I mean, this is what, 500-600 pages each book or something?
Oh gosh, yeah. It's about 1,500 pages across the 3 books. They're pretty big. Yeah.
It's no joke. And your Monstrous Manual, I noticed I was taking a quick scan at it earlier tonight. I was debating this. When I publish, do I have a monster for everything? Can I just skip the $50 expense and not have a zombie because everybody knows what a fucking zombie is? You have a monster for everything. Right? You made that conscious decision. You said, nah, screw it. I'm going for it. I made a monster.
Yeah.
You did. That's got to not be cheap, dude. Did you do AI shit on some of that, or did you just, wow?
No, that every single monster in the book is illustrated by hand by a guy named Old School Jelly. And
holy crap, dude.
Yeah.
Holy crap.
So a lot of art, a lot of effort. He did a great job. He's a member of our community. I met him as a member of our community. He had done a module for me called Sepulchre of the Sorceress Queen, and it was a great module. And he did the maps, and he just like casually mentions to me, it's like, oh, by the way, I do art.
Yeah.
And the next thing you know, the poor guy was like tasked with drawing 250 monsters, and
Jesus, poor bastard.
Yeah. But it's okay because he's German, and Germans really like to work. So.
They like the misery. They're a little masochistic.
Exactly. So it was really good, and it was so funny because I grew up working in like American media culture where we call it the shit sandwich. Like you have to start, if you're ever going to give criticism to someone, you have to be like, so, Mike, I really love what you did. The colors here are really top notch, and I love the high res you've done. I think the sword probably is a little bit ahistorical. Maybe we could work on kind of making that a little less anime, more historic. But I really want to mention, I love the vividness of the faces, right? And like Mike is like, what are you doing? Can you just tell me that you think I need to redraw the sword? Like, why are you wasting my time? Like, I have 250 images to draw. I don't have time for this American shit.
Well, you pussyfoot around. But that's great. That's great. So then I'm on the 3rd page here. So I know we said 10 o'clock and it's 10:17. So I appreciate you hanging in, dude. I wanted to make sure we go over all your stuff, though.
I think most of that stuff's no longer my stuff. It looks like that's just other people who have the word Autarch somewhere along the line.
Oh, you're right, huh? I just did. Oh, I thought I went Autarch publishing. It looks like I just threw Autarch channels. Oh, all right. Everybody. Okay, that's cool. Yeah. All right, cool. So we got all your stuff in there. Ooh.
Yeah, we looked at all my stuff. We're good to go.
All right. Yeah. Anything that I missed that you wanted to point out? Any sales going on? Any special things that you wanted to go over that I missed or whatever?
No, I mean, we hit it. So right now I've got Treasure Tome is going to be coming out. Is the next book I'll be shipping. That's going to come out later this year. You mentioned, ACKS II is in the process of being delivered, and then we're going to be kickstarting Before All Others, the Cyclopedia of Elven Civilization, probably in June. Okay. I think it's going to be a really fun book. If you love elves, it's got like 12 new character classes, tons of new types of magic, spell singing rules, elven forestry.
Diving into spell singers?
Yeah.
Diving in.
Diving in, man. We're going in.
Ooh. Brutal. All right. There's a lot of flack. You're ready for that, I hope.
I'm ready.
All right, cool, man. Cool. Listen, dude, thank you very much. Is there anything else you wanted to say? Anything else you wanted to talk about before we head out of here? Because I know you already.
No, man, you tricked me. We made over 2 hours.
I know. I'm sorry, man. I didn't want to cut off of your products, but they were also interesting. Sorry.
No, yeah, you broke my introversion streak. So this is good.
God.
This is great. We should do this again.
Definitely, man. If you want to do it again, we'll figure out a time. We'll do the whole your creative process and the business side of things. That way people could, now that they got to know you, now they could understand, you know, he did it, maybe I could do it, and he could give me some tips and tricks and lessons he learns. I could avoid some mistakes, like I said, Kickstarter stuff that people screwed up on, all that kind of thing. You know
Oh
what I
yeah,
mean?
absolutely, absolutely.
So thank you very much, everybody. Whoever's watching. You've been accelerated here, man. We started around like 20, 25, 30 each. Now you're up to 43 viewers. I'm down to 25. My people are older. I guess they're all asleep. So, yeah. So you're a little younger, I guess. So, yeah, we're rocking here. So whoever's still here watching me, go subscribe to his channel. All right. It's all links are all below to everything, guys. And we appreciate it. We'll have round 2. All right. The next phase. All right. The MCU phase 2 coming up here. The ACKS phase 2. I guess whenever we can figure it out. Okay.
Thanks so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, man. It was a great time. I totally appreciate all your time. And sorry we went a little bit over there, but if we had to start on time, I never start anything on time. So we kind of were doomed on one side or another. You know,
we took a bathroom break, so it's okay.
That's true. We did take it. Yeah. That's true. Tiny bladders unite. All right. So, all right, guys. Thank you very much for watching. And like I said, James Raddy's coming up. Rob Connolly's coming up. He's got a Kickstarter. All right. So, yeah, there's a lot coming up here soon. Rob's kickstarting his setting, so awesome. There's a lot to be had soon coming up here on the channel. All right, so hang tight, and we'll talk to you